The procession stopped. King Kael Draven's hand shot up, freezing an entire royal column mid-stride. His eyes locked onto a hooded figure at the market's edge, a woman clutching two small hands, her face half hidden but unmistakable. For 6 years, he'd believed her gone. Dead, maybe. Disappeared into shame and silence after he chose duty over her. But there she stood, alive, changed, and beside her, 2 children with eyes that mirrored his own. The crowd held its breath. If you want to see what happens when a rejected woman returns with secrets that could shatter a throne, stay until the end. Drop a like, tell us where you're watching from, and let's dive into this storm. The mountain air bit cold that morning, sharper than Alara Vance remembered. She stood at the edge of Greystone Village with her twin children flanking her like small sentries, her breath fogging in short bursts that dissolved into the gray dawn. Mira gripped her left hand tight enough to hurt. Rowan held the right, his palms sweaty despite the cold. Both silent, both watching the stone buildings ahead with wide, uncertain eyes that made her chest ache. 6 years. 6 years since she'd walked these roads, and nothing had changed except her. The village still huddled against the mountainside like it was trying to hide from the world. Same crooked rooftops patched with moss and neglect. Same narrow roads that wound uphill like old scars that never quite healed. Same suspicious eyes that would track her movement with the kind of attention reserved for prey. This was Lycan territory, ruled by bloodlines that went back centuries, governed by strength that could crush bone, defined by bonds that snapped into place whether you wanted them or not. The kind of bonds that were supposed to be sacred, unbreakable. Alara had learned the hard way that nothing was truly unbreakable. "Mama," Mira whispered, her voice small in the vast silence of morning. "Why does it smell like smoke?" "Because people here burn pine in their hearths," Alara said quietly, pulling her cloak tighter around her shoulders. "And because they don't trust strangers." Rowan's fingers tightened around hers. His nails dug into her skin. "Are we strangers?" The question hit harder than it should have. Alara looked down at her son, 5 years old, dark hair falling into eyes that were too knowing for his age. He watched her the way she used to watch her own mother, searching for lies hidden in careful words. "We're not strangers," she said finally, the words sticking in her throat. "We're just careful." It was the best answer she could give. How could she explain that this place had been her home once? That she'd grown up running through these streets, climbed these mountains, learned to shift under the full moon with other children who'd treated her like family? How could she tell them that she'd been bonded to the most powerful bloodline in the entire territory, destined to stand beside a king, and that she'd been cast out for it like garbage? The children didn't know. Didn't know their father had stood in front of the entire pack council 6 years ago and said the words that shattered her world. "I cannot accept this bond. My duty is to the throne, and she is not suitable for what the kingdom needs." She'd been 19, pregnant with twins she didn't know about yet, unwanted by the one person fate had chosen for her. Now she was 25, a mother. Still unwanted by the pack that had turned its back on her, but no longer ashamed of what she'd become in the darkness of exile. "Stay close," she murmured, guiding the children forward. "Don't talk to anyone unless I say it's okay, and if anything feels wrong, you run. Understand?" "Run where?" Mira asked. "Away, just away." It wasn't a good answer, but it was the only one she had. They moved through the outer district where the poorest families lived in houses that looked like strong wind might knock them down. Alara kept her hood up, shadows swallowing most of her face. A few early risers were already out, an old woman sweeping her porch, a man loading a cart with firewood, children chasing a scraggly dog between houses. Someone looked up, made eye contact. Alara looked away first, hating herself for it. 6 years ago, she would have stared them down, dared them to say something. But 6 years ago, she hadn't been responsible for 2 lives that depended entirely on her staying invisible. The market square loomed ahead, already bustling despite the early hour. Voices rose in rough barter and laughter that sounded more like growling. Vendors called out their wares, fresh meat, winter vegetables, furs, and leather goods. The smell of roasting chestnuts mixed with unwashed bodies and animal musk. Alara needed supplies. Medicine for her mother who was dying slowly in the cottage on the ridge. Food for the week. Maybe some warmer clothes for the children if she could afford it. Then she'd disappear back into obscurity where no one bothered to look because they'd already decided she didn't matter. Simple plan: get in, get out, survive another day. But the universe, it seemed, had other plans entirely. The horn sounded first. 3 sharp blasts that cut through the market noise like a blade through silk. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Heads turned toward the main road. Even the vendors went quiet, which never happened. The horns meant royalty, meant the king himself was passing through. Alara's stomach dropped so fast she thought she might be sick right there in the street. No, not now. Not today. Any day but today. She grabbed Mira and Rowan, pulling them toward a narrow alley between 2 shops that sold questionable meat and cheaper weapons. But the crowd surged forward like a living thing, pressing toward the main road to catch a glimpse of their king. Bodies hemmed her in from all sides. She couldn't move without shoving people out of the way, and that would draw exactly the kind of attention she couldn't afford. The horn sounded again, closer now. And then he appeared. King Cale Draven rode at the head of the royal column, mounted on a massive black warhorse that moved like liquid shadow given form. He wore no crown. Lycans didn't bother with such human theatrics, but power radiated from him anyway. It was in the set of his shoulders, the way he held himself, the casual authority of someone who'd been born knowing he would rule. Broad shoulders that had gotten broader with age and training. Sharp jaw that looked like it could cut glass. Eyes the color of winter storms, cold, distant, dangerous. He looked exactly as she remembered, and nothing like the boy who'd once whispered promises against her skin in the dark, when they'd both believed fate actually meant something. Alara turned her face away, pulling the hood lower until it shadowed everything. Her heart slammed against her ribs so hard she could feel it in her throat. Don't look this way. Don't see me. Just pass by and let me disappear again. But Mira, curious and fearless in the way only 5-year-olds could be, tugged her hand free. Mama, I can't see. Mira, no. Too late. The little girl slipped through the crowd like water through fingers, darting toward the front where she'd have a better view. Rowan followed immediately, loyal to his sister even when she was being reckless. They moved faster than Alara could react, small bodies weaving between adults who didn't notice or didn't care. Alara lunged after them, panic clawing up her throat. She shoved through bodies that wouldn't budge, muttered apologies that no one acknowledged. Her hood fell back, but she didn't stop to fix it. She broke through the front of the crowd just as Mira stumbled into the open road, right into the path of the royal procession. The warhorse reared up, front hooves pawing at air. Soldiers shouted warnings. Kael's hand shot out with inhuman speed, yanking the reins hard enough that the horse's muscles coiled under its black coat. The beast came down inches from where Mira stood frozen, too scared to scream. The crowd gasped as one. Alara didn't think, didn't calculate, just threw herself forward and scooped Mira into her arms while hauling Rowan back by his collar. Her hood fell completely away, dark hair spilling around her shoulders. And Cale Draven's gaze locked onto her face. The world stopped. Time stretched thin and fragile, every second a held breath that might shatter if anyone moved wrong. His expression didn't change, not at first. He just stared at her like she was a ghost that had crawled out of his past to haunt him in broad daylight. Then his eyes widened, just a fraction, just enough. Recognition slammed into him like a physical blow. Alara. Her name. Spoken in a voice she'd tried so hard to forget but still heard sometimes in dreams that left her shaking. She didn't respond. Couldn't. Her arms tightened around the children, every instinct screaming at her to run, but her legs had turned to stone. The crowd stared. Whispers rippled outward like poison spreading through water. Is that the one he rejected? I thought she was dead. She's back? Look at those children. Kael dismounted in one smooth motion, boots hitting the cobblestones with a sound like a judge's gavel. His second in command, a grizzled wolf named Torin, with scars covering half his face, moved to intercept. But Kael waved him off without looking, his attention fixed entirely on Alara. He walked toward her, slowly, like she was a wild animal that might bolt if he moved too fast. She wanted to. God, every fiber of her being wanted to run. But Mira was shaking in her arms, and Rowan pressed against her side with his small fist clenched, and she would not show fear in front of this man. Not again. Never again. Kale stopped 3 feet away, close enough that she could see the lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. Close enough to smell leather and pine and something underneath that was just him, unchanged by time or distance. His gaze dropped to the children. Mira stared back with wide gray eyes, storm gray, the exact shade of her father's, unafraid now that her mother held her. Rowan glared up at the king with a ferocity that would have been funny if the situation wasn't so impossible. Both of them had his eyes, his bone structure, the shape of his mouth. There was no hiding what they were. Kael's jaw tightened. A muscle jumped in his cheek. When he spoke, his voice came out rougher than before. "Elara, what?" He stopped, swallowed hard enough that she could see his throat work, started again. "Where have you been?" She found her voice somewhere in the wreckage of her composure. It came out hoarse, cold as the mountain wind. "Does it matter?" His brow furrowed like she'd said something he didn't understand. "You disappeared. No one knew where you'd gone. We searched. No one cared," she cut in, the words sharp enough to draw blood. "You made sure of that when you stood in front of the council and told them I wasn't good enough." The crowd was listening. Every single word would spread through the village by nightfall, twisted and reshaped until the truth was buried under layers of gossip. She didn't care anymore. Let them talk. Let them see what their precious king had left behind. Kael's expression hardened into something unreadable, but something flickered beneath it. Guilt, maybe. Or regret. She didn't have the energy to guess which. "We need to talk," he said, his voice dropping lower like he thought privacy mattered now. "No." "Elara." "No." She turned, gripping both children's hands tight enough to hurt. "Come on." She walked. Fast. Heart pounding so hard she could barely hear anything else. Waiting for him to stop her, to command her, to do what kings did when they didn't get their way. But he didn't. He just stood there, in the middle of the road, surrounded by his soldiers and his power and the weight of a throne he'd chosen over her, watching her leave. And for the first time in 6 years, Elara Vance felt something other than grief burning in her chest. She felt fury, pure, clean, sharp as broken glass. The cottage sat on the ridge like a broken tooth, small, weathered, barely standing against the elements. Elara had hated it as a child. The isolation, the way wind screamed through gaps in the walls during winter, the loneliness that seeped into your bones when you were the only family living this far from the village center. Now it was the only place that felt safe. Her mother lay in this back room, propped on pillows that had gone flat from months of use. The sickness had taken root slowly, spreading through her lungs like frost creeping across a window. Healers had come and gone, each one saying there was nothing to be done. The old woman was dying. Accept it. Elara refused to accept it. She'd lost too much already. She wouldn't lose her mother, too. "Mama," Rowan said, tugging her sleeve as she tried to coax her mother into drinking some herbal tea. "Is the bad man going to come here?" "He's not a bad man," Mira argued from where she sat on the floor, arranging rocks in careful patterns only she understood. "He's a king." "Kings can be bad," Rowan shot back, his voice taking on that stubborn edge he got when he was scared but trying not to show it. Elara set the tea down and crouched between them, smoothing Mira's dark curls with one hand while squeezing Rowan's shoulder with the other. Both children looked at her with those storm-gray eyes that weren't hers, waiting for answers she didn't know how to give. "He's not coming here," she said firmly, hoping it was true. "And even if he does, I won't let him hurt you. Either of you, understand?" They nodded, though doubt still lingered in Rowan's expression. He was the cautious one, the thinker, the one who questioned everything and trusted nothing until he'd examined it from every angle. Too much like her. Mira, on the other hand, had inherited her father's recklessness, the way she'd run into that street without thinking, pure Kael, that impulsive certainty that everything would work out because it always had before. Elara pushed the thought away before it could take root. She tucked the children into their shared bed, a narrow thing she'd built herself from scrap wood, and kissed their foreheads. Mira fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted from the day's excitement. Rowan took longer, his eyes tracking her movements as she tidied the small room. "Mama?" he whispered. "Yes? Are you scared?" The question caught her off guard. She stopped, a threadbare blanket hanging from her hands. Sometimes, she admitted, but being scared doesn't mean I can't protect you. It just means I'm paying attention. Rowan thought about that, finally nodded. Okay. When both children were asleep, Alara stepped into the cold night air. The village glittered below like fallen stars scattered across dark earth. Somewhere down there, Kyle was probably already planning his next move. Strategizing, calling advisors, doing whatever kings did when the past showed up and punched them in the face. She leaned against the porch railing, exhaustion dragging at her bones like weights. You should have stayed gone. Alara didn't turn. Her mother's voice, weak but still sharp as ever, drifted from the doorway behind her. I came back for you, Alara said. I didn't ask you to. You're dying, and you're a fool. Her mother coughed, the sound wet and rattling. You think he'll let this go? You think the council will pretend they didn't see those children? Alara's hands tightened on the railing until the wood bit into her palms. I don't care what they think. You should. Her mother shuffled closer, wrapped in every blanket they owned, eyes sunken but still fierce. You're not a girl anymore, Alara. You've got children, responsibilities. You can't just what? Alara turned to face her. Run again? Hide again? I've spent 6 years doing exactly that. I'm tired. Then you're going to get hurt again. I've already been hurt. Alara's voice cracked despite her best efforts to keep it steady. He did that. The pack did that. They broke me into pieces and left me to put myself back together. But I did. I survived. And I'll keep surviving with or without their approval. Her mother studied her for a long moment with eyes that had seen too much and believed in too little. Then, slowly, she nodded. You've changed, she said. Not an accusation, just an observation. I had to. Good. Her mother reached out, bony fingers brushing Alara's cheek with surprising gentleness. Because he's going to come for you. Maybe not tonight, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. And when he does, you need to be ready. Ready for what? To make the choice you couldn't make 6 years ago. Her mother's hand dropped. Between what you want and what you need, between your heart and your head. I chose my head last time, Alara said bitterly. I left. I protected myself, and I've regretted it every day since. Have you? Her mother asked. Or have you regretted losing him? Alara didn't answer, couldn't, because she didn't know anymore. Her mother went back inside, leaving her alone with the cold in her thoughts. Alara didn't sleep that night. She sat by the window, wrapped in a blanket, watching the road that wound up from the village, waiting for torches, for soldiers, for the inevitable confrontation that would shatter whatever fragile peace she'd managed to build. He came at dawn. Cale Draven didn't bring soldiers this time, just himself, standing at the base of the ridge where the road turned to footpath, looking up at the cottage like it might crumble if he breathed wrong. He'd come on foot, left his horse somewhere down in the village, probably, wore simple clothes instead of the formal attire he'd had on during the procession. He looked almost human like this. Almost. Alara met him at the door before he could knock, arms crossed over her chest, expression carved from stone. Leave. I need to talk to you. And I need you to leave. We don't always get what we need. Cale's jaw worked like he was chewing on words he didn't want to say. He looked older up close, lines etched around his eyes that hadn't been there before, silver threading through his dark hair at the temples. 6 years of ruling had worn him down in ways combat never had. Please, he said quietly. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. She almost said no, almost slammed the door in his face and locked it and pretended he didn't exist. But something in his voice, raw, desperate, nothing like the commanding tone he'd used in the market, stopped her. She stepped outside, closing the door behind her with enough force to make her point. 5 minutes, she said. Then you go. And you don't come back. He nodded, looked at her, really looked, like he was trying to memorize every detail, the way her hair fell over her shoulders, the scar on her chin from that time she'd fallen during training, the exhaustion carved into her features. I didn't know, he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. Didn't know what? About them. The children. He swallowed hard. Are they... Yes. The word hung between them, sharp and undeniable as a blade. Kale's breath hitched, his hands clenched at his sides. Why didn't you tell me? Alara laughed, bitter, broken, nothing like joy. Tell you? I tried. You wouldn't see me. Your guards turned me away at the stronghold 3 times. The council declared me unfit to even speak your name, so I left, and I survived. Without you. I would have... What? She stepped closer, fury rising like a tide. Acknowledged them? Claimed them? You couldn't even acknowledge me, Kael. You stood in front of everyone and said I wasn't suitable, that the bond was a mistake, that you needed someone stronger, better, more useful to your precious throne. I was trying to protect the pack. You were protecting yourself. The words tore out of her, years of buried pain erupting like a wound that had never properly healed. You were afraid of what they'd say, what they'd think if you chose a nobody from the ridge over a proper alliance. So you threw me away like I was nothing, like what we had meant nothing. Kael flinched like she'd struck him. That's not... It is. Her voice dropped, cold and final, as a grave. And now you need to leave. He didn't move. Just stood there, shoulders tight, hands clenched into fists at his sides like he was holding himself back from reaching for her. I want to meet them, he said. No. Alara? No. She turned toward the door. You lost that right 6 years ago when you chose politics over people. They're my children too. She froze. Slowly turned back to face him, fury blazing so hot she could barely see straight. They're mine, she said, each word deliberate. I carried them for 9 months while you sat on your throne. I birthed them alone in a cabin in the woods with no healer because no one would come for the woman you rejected. I raised them through fevers and nightmares and questions about why they don't have a father. You don't get to walk in now and claim them because it's convenient. It's not about convenience. Then what is it about? She stepped closer until they were almost touching, voice shaking with rage. Guilt? Legacy? Making yourself feel better about the choice you made? It's about them. Kael's control finally snapped, voice rising to match hers. They deserve to know their father. They deserve better than hiding on this ridge, pretending they don't exist. They deserve better than you. The words hit like a physical blow. Kael went completely still, silent. The fury drained out of Alara all at once, leaving her hollow and shaking. She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the rising sun. They deserve someone who chooses them, she said quietly. Every time, without hesitation. And you've already proven you can't do that. Kael's throat worked. His eyes were bright, with anger or grief she couldn't tell. I made a mistake, he said, voice rough. I know that now. I've known it for 6 years, but I can't change the past. All I can do is try to fix the future. There is no future, Alara said. Not for us. Not anymore. I'm not talking about us. I'm talking about them. He gestured toward the cottage. Whether you like it or not, people saw them today. They recognize them. The council will demand answers. And if I don't acknowledge them, someone else will. Someone who might not have their best interests at heart. Alara's stomach twisted. She hadn't thought that far ahead. Hadn't considered what would happen now that the secret was out. So what are you saying? She asked. I'm saying I can protect them. If you let me. Kael took a careful step closer. Acknowledge them publicly as my heirs. Give them the protection of my name. They'll be untouchable. They'll be targets. They already are. The moment I saw them, they became part of this whether we want them to be or not. His expression softened slightly. At least this way, they'll have the resources to defend themselves. Alara wanted to argue, wanted to find the flaw in his logic, but she couldn't, because he was right, and she hated that. I need time, she said finally. How much? I don't know. Alara, I said I don't know. Her voice broke. You can't just show up after 6 years and expect me to trust you, to forgive you, to hand over my children like they're pieces on a game board. It doesn't work like that. Kael stepped closer, close enough that she could see the exhaustion etched into every line of his face, close enough to feel the heat radiating from him despite the cold morning air. I'm not asking for forgiveness, he said quietly. I know I don't deserve that, And I'm not asking you to trust me. Not yet. I'm just asking for a chance. A chance to what? To be their father, he swallowed. And maybe to prove I'm not the same man who hurt you. Alara's throat tightened. Her eyes burned. She wanted to say no. Wanted to walk away and never look back. Wanted to protect her children from the world that had chewed her up and spit her out. But Mira's voice echoed in her mind. Is the bad man going to come here? And Rowan's? Are we strangers? Her children deserved more than hiding, more than shame, more than growing up wondering why they had to pretend they didn't exist, even if giving them that meant facing the man who'd broken her heart. 1 month, she said. Cale's eyes widened. What? 1 month. You get 1 month to prove yourself. She held his gaze, refusing to look away. Not as a king, not as some powerful alpha, as a man, as a father. You spend time with them. You earn their trust. You show me that you can put them first. And if I do, then we'll talk about what comes next. She took a breath. But if you fail, if you hurt them, manipulate them, use them for political gain, I disappear. And I promise you, Kyle, you'll never find us again. Kale didn't hesitate. Agreed. I mean it, Alara pressed. One mistake. One hint that you're putting the throne before them? I understand. He met her eyes with an intensity that made her chest tight. 1 month. I won't waste it. They stood there for a moment, the weight of the agreement settling between them like a living thing. Finally, Alara turned toward the door. Kyle. She stopped, didn't look back. Thank you, he said softly. She didn't respond, didn't acknowledge the words, just walked inside and closed the door, then leaned against it, heart pounding, wondering if she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life, or the bravest decision she'd ever faced. Either way, there was no going back now. The whispers started before dawn. Alara heard them from the ridge, voices carrying on the wind like poison, spreading through Greystone Village faster than wildfire. By the time the sun crested the mountains, everyone knew. The rejected woman had returned, with children, the king's children. She stood at the cottage window, watching smoke rise from chimneys below, and felt the weight of 1,000 eyes she couldn't see. They're talking about us, her mother rasped from the bed, each word a struggle against the fluid filling her lungs. Saying things. Let them talk. Alara didn't turn from the window. The village looked peaceful from up here, deceptive. They'll do more than talk, girl. Her mother coughed, rough and wet. The council won't allow this to stand, not without answers. Alara knew she was right. She'd known it the moment Kyle walked away from her door yesterday. 1 month. She'd given him 1 month to prove himself, but she hadn't considered what that month would cost her. What it would cost all of them. Mira padded into the room, rubbing sleep from her eyes with small fists. Mama, I'm hungry. I'll make breakfast in a minute, sweetheart. Can we go to the market again? I want to see the pretty fabrics. No. The word came out harder than she intended. Mira's face crumpled. Alara softened her voice, kneeling down. Not today. We're staying home. But you said we needed medicine for grandmother. I'll get it later, when there's fewer people. Rowan appeared in the doorway, always the observer. He studied his mother's face with those 2 knowing gray eyes. You're scared of them. It wasn't a question. Alara reached out, touching his cheek. I'm careful. There's a difference. The king isn't scared, Mira said, her voice taking on that dreamy quality it got when she talked about things she didn't understand. He looked brave on his big horse. Brave people can still be dangerous, Alara said quietly. Remember that. A sharp knock at the door cut through the conversation like a blade. Everyone froze. It was too early for visitors, too deliberate to be friendly. Alara's hand instinctively moved to the kitchen knife she'd left on the counter. Who is it? She called out. Torin, the king's second in command. I'm alone. She recognized the name. The scarred wolf who'd stood beside Kyle during the procession. Her hand hovered over the door handle, debating. What do you want? To deliver a message and an invitation. His voice was gruff but not unkind. I'd rather not shout it through the door. Alara glanced back at her mother, who nodded slightly. She cracked the door open just enough to see him. Torin was older than Kale, maybe 40, with gray streaking through his dark beard and scars that told stories of battles won and lost. One ran from his temple to his jaw, puckered and white with age. His eyes held no malice, only tired pragmatism. "The king requests your presence at the stronghold this afternoon, 2 o'clock. He wants to discuss the children's future." Alara's jaw clenched. "I already told him my conditions." "He's not summoning you," Torn interrupted gently. "He's asking. There's a difference. But the council is pressuring him hard. They want answers. If you don't come willingly, they'll force the issue. Tomorrow it won't be me knocking politely. It'll be council members with authority to drag you in." She studied his face, looking for deception, found only weary honesty. "And if I refuse anyway? Then they'll claim you're hiding something, that the children aren't his, that you're trying to manipulate the situation." Torn shifted his weight. "Look, I don't pretend to know what happened between you two, but right now the king is trying to protect you. Let him." "He's 6 years too late for that." "Maybe so, but he's trying now. That should count for something." Alara wanted to slam the door in his face, wanted to pack up the children and run again, disappear into the wilderness where councils and kings and politics couldn't touch them. But she'd tried running. It hadn't worked. 2 o'clock, Torn repeated. "Main hall. Bring the children if you want. Or leave them here. Your choice. But come." He turned and walked away before she could respond, his boots crunching on the frost-covered ground. Alara closed the door and leaned against it, feeling trapped in a cage that was tightening with every breath. "Are we going to see the castle?" Mira asked, excitement creeping into her voice. "I don't know yet." But she did know. She'd known the moment Torrin mentioned the council forcing the issue. Running would only make things worse. Hiding would paint her as guilty of something she hadn't done, raising her children in peace. She'd spent 6 years running from this village, from these people, from the memory of what Kael had done to her. Maybe it was time to stand still and face what came, even if it destroyed her. The Draven stronghold looked different in daylight, less like a fortress designed to keep enemies out, more like a monument to power built directly into the mountain itself. Stone towers reached toward gray skies like fingers clawing for something they'd never reach. Banners bearing the Draven crest, a wolf's head wreathed in silver flames, snapped in the wind with sharp cracks that sounded like whips. Guards stood at every entrance, watching her approach with expressions that ranged from curiosity to open hostility. She felt their eyes tracking her every movement, weighing her, judging her, finding her wanting. Alara had left the children with her mother despite Mira's tearful protests and Rowan's quiet disappointment. This wasn't a place for them. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Whatever happened in that council chamber today would determine whether they had any future here at all. She walked through the main gates alone, chin up, refusing to show the fear crawling up her spine like ice. Torrin met her in the courtyard, his scarred face impassive. "This way." He led her through corridors she'd walked once before, 6 years ago, when she'd been young and stupid enough to believe love mattered more than politics. The walls were covered in tapestries depicting pack history, great battles where lichens tore through enemy lines, legendary alphas who'd ruled with iron fists, sacred bonds that had shaped the kingdom for generations. None of them showed what happened to the bonds that broke, to the people who were deemed unworthy. They stopped outside massive oak doors carved with images of wolves in mid-hunt, their teeth bared, their prey forever frozen in terror. "The council is already inside," Torrin said quietly. "Fair warning, they're not happy. They see you as a threat to carefully laid plans." "When are they ever happy?" Alara muttered. Something that might have been respect flickered in his eyes. "Kael will speak first. Let him handle the politics. Don't engage with the council directly unless you absolutely have to. They'll try to provoke you. Don't give them ammunition." "Why are you helping me?" Torrin studied her for a long moment. "Because 6 years ago I told the king he was making a mistake, that rejecting his fated mate would cost him more than he could imagine. He didn't listen." He paused. "Maybe he will now." He pushed open the doors. The council chamber was exactly as she remembered, circular, with a raised platform in the center where the accused or petitioners stood to be judged. Stone benches arranged in tiers around it like an arena, designed to make whoever stood in the center feel small and exposed. 12 council members sat in their places, faces carved from the same unyielding stone as the walls. Old wolves, all of them. Traditional. Bound by laws written centuries ago by people who'd never questioned whether those laws were just. Kael stood on the platform, hands clasped behind his back. He wore formal attire now, black leather vest over a deep gray shirt, silver accents at his collar and wrists that marked him as royalty. But his eyes found hers immediately as she entered, and something in them softened. Regret, maybe. Or hope. She couldn't afford to care which. Elder Morthen, the council leader, rose as Alara entered. He was ancient, probably 70, with a gray beard that reached his chest and eyes like chips of winter ice. "Alara Vance," he said, her name dripping with disdain like poison from a wound. "You were not summoned before this council." "I was invited," she corrected, keeping her voice steady despite her hammering heart. "By the king." "By the king. Not by this council, which holds authority in matters of bloodline and succession." "The king's authority supersedes yours in all matters," Kael said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute command that made several council members flinch. "She's here at my request. That's all the authority required." Morthen's jaw tightened, muscles jumping beneath wrinkled skin, but he inclined his head slightly. "Very well. Let us address why we're all here wasting valuable time. Yesterday, during the royal procession, the entire village witnessed you." He gestured at Alara like she was something distasteful. "With two children who bear unmistakable resemblance to our king. Explain yourself." Alara looked at Kael. He gave a slight nod, permission to speak. "They're mine," she said simply, letting each word fall like a stone into still water. "I gave birth to them 6 years ago. Alone. Miles from this village. After this council declared me unfit to even speak to their father." Murmurs rippled through the chamber like wind through dead leaves. "You claim these children are the king's heirs?" another council member demanded. This one was younger, maybe 50, with calculating eyes and perfectly groomed silver hair. "You expect us to simply accept this?" "I'm not claiming anything. I'm stating fact." Ilara's hands clenched at her sides. "Whether you accept it is irrelevant to the truth." "Facts require proof," Morthen said coldly. "Any desperate woman could produce children and claim royal blood, hoping for status or wealth." Kael's voice cut through like steel drawn from a sheath. "Look at them. Anyone with eyes and half a brain can see the truth. They have my eyes, my bone structure. The Draven bloodline is unmistakable." "Resemblance is not proof in matters of succession," a thin woman named Lyra said from the third tier. She had silver hair pulled back so tightly it looked painful and a voice like frost forming on glass. "There are protocols, tests, verification processes that exist for precisely this reason." "Then test them," Alara interrupted, anger rising despite her best efforts to contain it. "Take whatever blood you need. Run whatever magical verification you have. But don't you dare stand there and act like I'm some opportunist when you're the ones who cast me out 6 years ago." Morthen's eyes narrowed. "Your anger doesn't change protocol, girl. These children, if they are indeed the king's offspring, should have been presented to this council immediately upon birth. Your failure to do so raises serious questions about your intentions and your fitness as a mother." "My intentions?" Alara laughed, the sound bitter and sharp enough to cut. "My intention was survival, that's all. I didn't come crawling back here to claim anything from any of you. I came because my mother is dying and she asked to see me before the end. That's the only reason I'm anywhere near this cursed village." "Yet here you are," Lyra said, leaning forward with predatory interest, "conveniently appearing with royal children just as succession questions arise, just as the council has been pressuring the king to secure the bloodline through proper channels." Alara's stomach dropped. "What succession questions?" Kael's expression darkened like storm clouds gathering. "That's council business." "It concerns her now," Morthen said, a hint of satisfaction in his voice. "Since she's brought children into the equation that complicate everything we've been working toward." He turned to Alara, studying her like an insect pinned to a board. "The king has no official heir, no acknowledged children. For 6 years, this council has been negotiating a strategic alliance marriage that would secure the bloodline and strengthen our position with the Northern Territory." Understanding crashed over Alara like ice water, stealing her breath. They'd been planning his marriage to someone else, someone suitable, someone who came with armies and alliances and all the things Alara could never offer. and now she'd shown up and ruined everything. "I see," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you?" Lyra leaned forward, lips curving into something that wasn't quite a smile. "You've complicated 8 months of delicate negotiations, created scandal that will spread through every territory by week's end, raised questions about the king's judgment and his ability to put duty before personal entanglements. That's enough," Kyle said, his voice dropping to a growl that made the air in the chamber feel thick and dangerous. Power radiated from him in waves. "Alara has done nothing wrong. I'm the one who rejected the bond. I'm the one who sent her away. I'm the one who made the choice that created this situation. Whatever consequences exist are mine to bear." "With respect, my king," Morthen said, though his tone held no respect at all, "your personal feelings are irrelevant to the stability of this kingdom. This council must consider what's best for the pack as a whole." "What's best for the pack?" Kael interrupted, stepping forward with enough force that several council members actually leaned back, "is acknowledging the truth instead of burying it under political convenience. Those children are mine. I intend to claim them as my heirs, publicly, officially, starting today." The chamber erupted into chaos. Council members shouted over each other, voices rising in a cacophony of outrage and protest. Some supported the king out of loyalty or fear. Others demanded more proof, more time, more consideration of the political ramifications. A few suggested the children be examined by healers and bloodline experts to verify their heritage before any official claims were made. Alara felt sick. This was exactly what she'd feared. Her children, reduced to political pawns and scientific specimens before they'd even met their father properly. Before they'd had a chance to be just children. "Quiet!" Kael's voice boomed through the chamber like thunder, silencing everyone instantly. The power in it was undeniable. Alpha command that bypassed reason and went straight to instinct. "I've made my decision. The children will be acknowledged. Alara will be treated with the respect due to the mother of my heirs. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly. In the training yard. With whatever weapons they prefer." The threat hung in the air, unmistakable. "You can't simply decree this into existence," Morthen said, though his voice had lost some of its certainty. "There are procedures, laws. The Northern Alliance can be renegotiated or dissolved. I don't care which." Kael's eyes were hard as winter stone. "This discussion is over." He stepped down from the platform and walked toward Alara, each footfall deliberate and measured, offering his hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. She stared at it like it might burn her, like accepting it would mean something she wasn't ready to mean. "Trust me," he said quietly, so only she could hear. "Just this once." Against every instinct screaming at her to run, against 6 years of learned self-preservation, Alara took his hand. His fingers closed around hers, warm and solid and real. He led her out of the chamber, leaving the council in stunned, furious épouvantes. They didn't stop walking until they reached a private study, smaller than the council chamber, warmer, with a fire crackling in the hearth and books lining the walls from floor to ceiling. The smell of old leather and wood smoke filled the space. Kyle released her hand the moment the door closed behind them and ran his fingers through his hair, tension radiating from every line of his body like heat from a forge. "I'm sorry," he said, his back to her. "That was worse than I expected. Morthen has been pushing the Northern Alliance for months. I knew he wouldn't back down easily, but I didn't think he'd attack you directly like that." "What were you expecting?" Alara shot back, anger she'd been holding back in the council chamber finally breaking free. "A warm welcome? Congratulations on your secret children? They hate me. They've always hated me because I was poor and common and not good enough for their precious king. They don't know you. They don't want to know me." She paced the room, unable to stand still, energy crackling through her like lightning, looking for somewhere to strike. "You heard them. They think I'm some opportunist trying to trap you, some desperate woman who got pregnant on purpose to secure a place in the royal family. I don't care what they think." "Well, I do," the words burst out of her. "Because those children have to live in this world, and if everyone believes their mother is a liar and a manipulator, what kind of life will they have? What kind of future?" Kael caught her arm as she paced past him, stopping her mid-stride. His hand was warm through the thin fabric of her sleeve. "Then let me fix it." "How?" She tried to pull away, but he held firm, not hard enough to hurt, but enough to keep her there. "How do you fix 6 years of absence? How do you fix a council that's already decided I'm the problem? By making the announcement official, publicly acknowledging them, showing everyone that I claim them, that I want them in my life, that there's no question about their legitimacy or their place in this family. Alara finally pulled free, stepping back. And what about me? What about you? Where do I fit in this grand plan of yours? Her voice rose despite her efforts to control it. Am I just the woman who birthed your heirs? Some footnote in your royal history? The inconvenient truth you have to acknowledge but would rather forget? That's not... Kale stopped, took a breath, started again. What do you want, Alara? Tell me. Because I'm trying to do right by you and the children, but I can't read your mind. The question hung between them, heavy with 6 years of unspoken pain and longing. What did she want? 6 years ago, she'd wanted him. Wanted the bond, the future, the fairy tale ending everyone said was written in the stars and sealed by fate. Now she didn't know, didn't trust herself to know. I want my children to be safe, she said finally, her voice quieter now. Tired. I want them to grow up without shame, without having to hide who they are or apologize for existing. Then let me give them that. At what cost? She met his eyes. What are you willing to sacrifice for them, Kael? Your council's approval? Your political alliances? Your throne? Kael's expression shifted, something raw and vulnerable crossing his face that made him look younger, more like the boy she'd fallen in love with before duty and destiny had torn them apart. Whatever it takes, he said simply. Before she could respond, a sharp knock interrupted them. Torin entered without waiting for permission, his scarred face grim. My king, we have a problem. What now? Kael's voice carried the exhaustion of someone who'd been fighting battles on too many fronts for too long. The council is demanding a formal response by tonight. They're threatening to vote on whether to recognize the children without your approval if you don't give them something concrete. Torin paused. And there's another complication. Lady Seraphine has arrived, 3 days early. The name meant nothing to Alara, but Kael's face went carefully blank in the way it did when he was hiding something. Who's Lady Seraphine? She asked, though ice was already forming in her stomach. Torin glanced at Kael, who gave a slight nod of permission. The woman the council arranged for the king to marry, Torin said, his voice matter of fact, daughter of the Northern Alpha. The alliance marriage we've been negotiating for 8 months. She's here to finalize the betrothal contract. Alara felt like she'd been punched in the chest. The air left her lungs in a rush. You're engaged, she said flatly, the words tasting like ash. It's not finalized, but you were planning to marry her. Not a question, a statement of fact that couldn't be argued away. The council was planning it. Negotiations were ongoing, but I never agreed to anything final. Did you refuse? She stepped closer, needing to see his eyes when he answered. When they brought you this woman with her armies and her alliances and everything I could never give you, did you say no? Kael didn't answer immediately. That silence was answer enough. Alara turned toward the door, vision blurring with tears she refused to shed. Not here. Not in front of him. Alara, wait. No! She spun back, anger blazing through the hurt. You asked for 1 month to prove yourself, to show me you could put the children first, to demonstrate you're not the same man who rejected me 6 years ago. Her voice shook. And the first thing I learned when I set foot in your stronghold is that you're in active marriage negotiations with someone else? I didn't know you were alive. Kael's control finally snapped, his voice rising to match hers. For 6 years I thought you were gone. Dead, maybe, or so far away I'd never find you. And I had responsibilities, duties. The pack needed stability, and I needed an heir. The pack. Always the pack. Alara laughed, the sound hollow and broken. Nothing's changed, has it? You're still choosing duty over everything else, over me, over the children you claim to want. That's not fair. Fair? She stepped closer, voice dropping to something dangerous and sharp. You want to talk about fair? I raised your children alone while you were here negotiating marriage contracts and playing politics. I scraped and struggled and did whatever I had to do just to keep them fed and warm. And you were here, safe in your fortress, planning a future that didn't include the family you already had. The words hit their mark. Kael flinched like she'd struck him, I didn't know, he said again, quieter now, almost desperate. You didn't want to know. There's a difference. She moved toward the door, needing to get out before she broke completely. I should never have come here. Should never have believed you might actually change. If you leave now, Kael said, his voice tight with controlled emotion, the council will interpret it as guilt, as running. They'll move against you. Alara stopped with her hand on the door handle. Let them try. They'll use the children against you, claim you're unfit, that you kept them hidden to manipulate me, to wait until the perfect moment to extract maximum advantage, that you're using them as pawns. I kept them hidden to protect them from this. She gestured wildly at the room, at the stronghold, at everything the stone walls represented. From council politics and succession wars and people like Lady Seraphine who'll see them as threats to be eliminated or obstacles to be overcome. Seraphine isn't like that. You don't know what she's like? Alara's voice cracked. You don't know anything about her except that she comes with the right alliances and the right bloodline and the right political connections. Just like you didn't know anything about me except that I didn't have any of those things. The silence that fell was absolute, broken only by the crackling fire. Kael looked like she'd ripped something vital out of his chest. That's not true, he said finally, his voice rough and raw. I knew you. I knew you were brave enough to challenge me when everyone else just agreed with whatever I said. I knew you were strong enough to survive things that would have broken most people. I knew you made me laugh when nothing else could, that you saw me as more than just the future king. He paused, his throat working. I knew you, and I chose to forget because remembering hurt too much. Alara's hands trembled. She clenched them into fists, nails biting into her palms. It's too late for this, she whispered. Is it? Yes. You're the king. I'm nobody. And now there's some northern lady here with her father's armies and expectations and detailed plans for a future that doesn't include me or my children. I'll end it, Kael interrupted. What? The marriage negotiations, the alliance talks, all of it. I'll end them, tonight, before Seraphine even unpacks her bags. Torin made a strangled sound. My king, the political ramifications. I don't care. Kael's eyes never left Alara's face. I spent 6 years living with the consequences of choosing politics over truth, duty over what I actually wanted. I won't make that mistake again. Not with you, not with our children. You'd risk an alliance with the Northern Territory? Alara asked, searching his face for deception and finding none. Risk insulting a powerful alpha and his daughter? For what? Some woman you rejected years ago and 2 children you just learned existed? For the mother of my children. For the woman who survived when I gave her nothing. For the family I should have protected 6 years ago. He stepped closer. For you. The words hung in the air like a vow. Alara wanted to believe him. Wanted it so badly it physically hurt, like something vital was being torn from her chest. But belief was dangerous. Hope was a weapon that had already cut her deeper than any blade. Words are easy, she said, hating how her voice shook. Prove it. How? Send her away. Tonight, publicly. Show everyone in this stronghold and this village that you're not playing political games with people's lives. Kael nodded without hesitation. Done. And the council? Can accept my decision or challenge me for leadership. Either way, the decision is made and it's final. Torin shifted uncomfortably, his scarred face troubled. This will create serious problems, my king. The Northern Alpha won't take this insult lightly, and the council has been building this alliance for months. They'll see it as a betrayal. Then I'll handle those problems, Kael said, his voice carrying the absolute authority of someone who'd made an irreversible choice. Set up a meeting with Lady Seraphine, private. I'll speak with her myself and explain the situation. Torin bowed, though his expression clearly suggested he thought his king had lost his mind. Maybe he had. He left, closing the door quietly behind him. Alara stood frozen, trying to process what had just happened. Kael was willing to destroy months of political work, risk a powerful alliance, potentially start a conflict with the Northern Territory, all for her and the children. It didn't make sense. Kings didn't do this. Alphas didn't sacrifice strategy for sentiment. Why? She asked. Why now? Why not 6 years ago when it might have actually mattered? Because 6 years ago I was a coward. His voice was steady, unflinching, brutally honest. I let fear make my decisions. Fear of what the council would think. Fear of appearing weak if I chose my heart over my head. Fear of making the wrong choice and dooming the pack. He paused. But the only wrong choice I ever made was walking away from you. That's a pretty speech. It's the truth. The one truth I've been running from for 6 years. He took another step closer. I can't change the past. Can't undo the pain I caused. But I can choose differently now. If you'll let me. Elara's carefully constructed walls were crumbling. She'd built them so carefully, reinforced them with years of anger and justified hurt. But Kael was dismantling them brick by brick with nothing but raw honesty. It terrified her more than anything the council could do. I need to go, she said abruptly. The children will be worried. My mother can't watch them for long in her condition. Will you come back? The question hung between them, weighted with meaning. I don't know. Elara, you said 1 month, she interrupted, moving toward the door before she could change her mind. This is day 2. You've got 28 days left to prove I should trust you again. Use them wisely. She left before he could respond, before the look in his eyes could break down the last of her defenses. The walk back to the ridge felt longer than it should have, every step heavy with the weight of decisions she didn't know how to make. Behind her, the stronghold loomed against gray skies. Ahead of her, the cottage waited, small, broken, but safe. She was caught between 2 worlds, belonging fully to neither, and she had no idea which one would destroy her first. Night had fallen by the time Elara reached the cottage. The windows glowed with warm candlelight, a beacon in the darkness. She could see shadows moving inside. Her mother shuffling around despite her weakness, the children probably getting ready for bed. Normal, safe. Everything she'd fought to build, but safety was an illusion now. Had been since the moment Kael's eyes locked on hers in the market square. She pushed open the door to chaos. Mira and Rowan rushed her immediately, talking over each other in an excited jumble of words. Mama, where were you? Grandmother said you went to the castle. Is the king really our father? Are we going to be princes and live in the big house? Elara gathered them close, breathing in the scent of their hair, milk and honey and something indefinably them. Slow down, one question at a time. Her mother sat by the dying fire, wrapped in every blanket they owned, watching with knowing eyes that saw too much. Well? The old woman asked. What happened at the stronghold? Elara sank into a chair, exhaustion crashing over her like a wave. The council wants proof of bloodline, tests, verification. They see the children as a threat to their carefully planned alliance. She rubbed her face. There's a woman there, Lady Seraphine, from the Northern Territory. They were planning to marry her to Kael. Were? He says he's ending the negotiations, sending her away, choosing us. She laughed without humor. But he said things 6 years ago, too, and look how that turned out. Her mother coughed, the sound wet and rattling. So what are you going to do? I don't know. The admission hurt. Stay and risk the council finding some way to take the children from me? Run again and spend the rest of our lives hiding? Those aren't your only choices, her mother said quietly. Aren't they? You could fight. Actually fight, instead of running or hiding or hoping it all works out somehow. I've been fighting for 6 years. You've been surviving, her mother corrected. That's not the same thing. Fighting means standing your ground, making demands, refusing to accept less than what you and those children deserve. Before Elara could respond, Rowan spoke up from where he sat by the fire. Can I ask you something, Mama? Always, sweetheart. If he's really our father, why did he leave us? The question punched through her defenses like a fist through rotten wood. All the careful explanations she'd prepared over the years evaporated. How did you explain politics and duty and fear to a 5-year-old? How did you make him understand that sometimes people made terrible choices for what they believed were good reasons? It's complicated, she said, hating the inadequacy of the words. That's what adults say when they don't want to explain things, Rowan said with the brutal honesty of childhood. Teacher said so. He made a choice, Elara said carefully, choosing each word like she was walking through a minefield. A choice to be king instead of being with us. And I made a choice to leave instead of fighting to stay. She paused. We both made mistakes. Do you regret it? Mira asked, her gray eyes so like Kael's it hurt, watching her mother's face intently. Yes. No. Every single day. Never. I regret that you grew up without a father, Alara said finally, but I don't regret keeping you safe. I'd make that choice again in a heartbeat. Are we safe now? Rowan pressed, his voice small and uncertain in a way that made Alara's chest ache. Before she could answer, glass shattered. A rock crashed through the window, wrapped in dirty cloth. The children screamed. Alara threw herself over them as more rocks followed, smashing through what was left of the window in an explosion of glass and violence. Then voices outside. Angry, drunk, hateful. Whore! Homewrecker! Royal slut! Send her back where she came from! Alara's mother struggled to her feet, grabbing the iron fire poker with shaking hands. Get the children to the back room, now! Alara didn't argue. She grabbed Mira and Rowan, both crying now, terrified, and pulled them toward the bedroom as more rocks hammered the walls. Someone was pounding on the door, rattling it in its frame with enough force to make the hinges groan. Stay here, Alara ordered, pushing both children into the narrow closet. Don't come out until I say it's safe, do you understand? Mama, I'm scared. I know, baby, but you have to be brave for me. Both of you, stay quiet and stay hidden. Mama, stay! She closed the closet door and ran back to the main room, her heart hammering so hard she could barely breathe. Her mother had positioned herself by the door despite barely being able to stand, the fire poker raised like a weapon. The door was splintering under repeated blows, wood cracking with sounds like breaking bones. It wouldn't hold much longer. Alara looked around desperately for anything she could use as a weapon, found a heavy iron pan hanging by the stove. It would have to do. The door burst open with a crack like thunder. 3 men stumbled in, reeking of cheap alcohol and rage. Alara recognized one, Marcus, a pack member a few years older than her who'd always resented her family's poverty. The other 2 she didn't know, but their faces were twisted with the kind of hatred that didn't need reasons. There she is, Marcus slurred, swaying on his feet. The king's whore. The woman who thinks she can come back here and ruin everything. Get out of my house, Alara said, raising the pan with both hands. Her voice shook but held steady. Get out now, or I'll make you regret it. Or what? Marcus laughed, the sound ugly and mean. You'll hit us? You should have stayed gone, Alara. Nobody wants you here. Not the pack, not the council, not even the king, if he had any sense left. The king does want them, Alara's mother said, her voice stronger than her body. He claimed them today, in front of the whole council. The king's a fool, one of the other men spat, throwing away a strategic alliance for used goods and bastard children. Alara swung. The pan connected with Marcus's jaw with a sickening crack that echoed through the small room. He went down hard, blood spraying from his split lip, his eyes rolling back. The other 2 men froze for a heartbeat, shocked. Then they rushed her. Alara fought like a cornered wolf, all desperation and maternal fury. The pan connected with ribs, heard them crack, caught someone's shoulder. Someone grabbed her hair, yanking backward hard enough to make her vision blur with pain. She screamed, twisting, driving her elbow back into soft stomach. Her mother swung the poker, catching one man across the back with a dull thud. He howled and turned on her, backhanding the frail old woman with casual brutality. She went down like a puppet with cut strings. No! Alara threw herself between them and her mother's crumpled form. A fist caught her in the jaw. The world spun. She tasted copper and salt. Hit the floor hard enough to drive the air from her lungs. Through blurred vision, she saw her mother lying motionless, saw the men advancing, saw the bedroom door crack open. Saw Rowan burst out, his small face fierce with protective fury that looked so much like his father it stopped her heart. Get away from my mother! Rowan, no! Everything happened at once. Rowan lunged at the nearest man with 5-year-old courage and no sense of his own size. The man backhanded him almost casually, like swatting a fly. Rowan flew into the wall with a sickening thud, his small body crumpling. Mira screamed from the bedroom doorway, high and piercing, and something inside Alara shattered completely. She didn't remember grabbing the iron pan again, didn't remember getting to her feet, just remembered the satisfying crunch as she brought it down on the man's skull with every ounce of strength she possessed. Again, again. Blood splattered, bone cracked under iron. Strong hands grabbed her from behind, pulling her away. She fought them too, blind with rage and terror and the primal need to protect her children. Elara, stop! It's me! It's Torin! The voice penetrated through the red haze. She blinked, vision clearing slowly. Torin stood in the destroyed doorway with half a dozen royal guards fanning out around him, weapons drawn. The 3 attackers were on the ground, 2 unconscious, 1 possibly dead from the cave-in on the side of his skull. She couldn't tell and didn't care. Her mother was breathing but barely conscious, blood trickling from her temple. Rowan lay against the wall, clutching his arm at a wrong angle, tears streaming down his face. Mira sobbed from where she'd hidden behind the overturned table. "The children!" Elara gasped, her throat raw from screaming. "Please, help the children." "We've got them," Torin said gently, already moving toward Rowan. "We've got all of you." Elara's legs gave out. She was falling. The floor rushed up to meet her. Strong arms caught her before she hit the ground, lifting her like she weighed nothing. The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was Kyle bursting through the door, his face a mask of rage and anguish, his eyes finding hers across the chaos of her destroyed home. Then nothing but black. Elara woke to unfamiliar softness. Not the thin mattress she'd grown used to, not the rough blankets that smelled of pine and smoke. This was silk against her skin, warmth that didn't come from a struggling fire, and silence that felt wrong after years of wind howling through gaps in cottage walls. She opened her eyes to a ceiling she didn't recognize, vaulted, painted with scenes of wolves running beneath stars. The stronghold, memory crashed back. The attack. The men. Rowan flying into the wall, her mother's blood on the floor. The children! She tried to sit up and pain exploded through her ribs, stealing her breath. "Easy!" A woman's voice, unfamiliar. Gentle hands pressed her back down. "You've got 3 cracked ribs and a concussion. Moving too fast will make both worse." Elara turned her head, ignoring the way it made the room spin. A healer sat beside the bed, middle-aged with kind eyes and gray threading through her dark hair. "My children, where are they?" "Safe, both sleeping in the next room. Your son has a broken arm that's been set and splinted. Your daughter has some bruises, but nothing serious. They're fine, I promise." "My mother," the healer's expression shifted. "Stable, barely. The blow to her head was severe, and with her existing illness..." She trailed off, the unspoken truth hanging heavy. Elara closed her eyes, fighting tears. "I need to see them. You need to rest. I need to see my children." She forced herself upright despite the pain, gritting her teeth against the nausea. "Now!" The healer sighed but didn't argue. She helped Elara stand, supporting her as they crossed to an adjoining door. The room beyond was smaller but just as fine. Mira and Rowan slept in a bed 3 times the size of the one they shared at home, their small bodies barely making dents in the mattress. Rowan's arm was wrapped in clean white bandages, his face peaceful in sleep despite the purple bruise blooming along his cheekbone. Elara's legs gave out. She collapsed beside the bed, reaching out with trembling hands to touch Rowan's uninjured arm, to smooth Mira's tangled hair. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." "Why are you apologizing?" The voice came from the doorway. Kale stood there, still wearing the same clothes from earlier, but rumpled now, stained with blood that might have been hers. He looked like he hadn't slept, like he'd been standing guard all night. "Because this is my fault," Elara said, not looking at him. "I brought them here, put them in danger. The men who did this are in custody." His voice was flat, controlled in a way that suggested violence barely contained. "They'll face justice." "What kind of justice?" She finally looked at him. "A fine? Banishment? They tried to kill us, Kale. They would have if Torin hadn't arrived when he did." "I know." He stepped into the room, moving quietly despite his size. "That's why they'll be executed. At dawn. Public hanging in the village square." Elara's breath caught. "You can't." "I can. I am." His eyes were hard as winter stone. "They attacked the mother of my children, harmed my son, terrorized my daughter. There's only one punishment for that." The council agrees, for once. A muscle jumped in his jaw. Even Morthen didn't object. What they did was unforgivable. Elara should have felt satisfaction, vindication. Instead, she just felt tired and broken and scared of what came next. This will make things worse, she said quietly. People will see it as you choosing me over the pack, executing pack members to protect an outsider. You're not an outsider, you're the mother of my heirs. I'm the woman the pack rejected 6 years ago. That hasn't changed just because you've acknowledged the children. She looked down at Rowan's sleeping face. If anything, it's worse now. Before I was just unwanted. Now I'm a threat. Cale knelt beside her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him. Then I'll eliminate the threat. Anyone who comes after you or the children will face the same fate as those 3. You can't kill everyone who disagrees with you. Watch me. The absolute certainty in his voice sent chills down her spine. This wasn't the boy she'd known 6 years ago, uncertain and torn between duty and desire. This was a king who'd made a choice and would burn down anyone who stood in his way. It should have reassured her. Instead, it terrified her. What about Lady Seraphine? She asked, changing the subject. Did you speak with her? Something flickered across his face. Yes. And? And she's leaving tomorrow morning. The alliance is dissolved. The council is furious. He paused. She took it better than I expected. What did you tell her? The truth. That I have children with my fated mate, that I'm claiming them and their mother, that any marriage alliance is impossible. He met her eyes. She said she respected honesty, even when it destroyed months of careful planning. Alara laughed bitterly. How diplomatic of her. She also said something else. Kael's voice dropped. She warned me that ending the alliance would have consequences, that her father won't take the insult lightly, that I should prepare for retaliation. What kind of retaliation? The kind that starts wars. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Alara's hands clenched in her lap. You're risking war for us. I'm preventing one. If I'd married Seraphine while knowing you and the children existed, that lie would have eventually destroyed everything. Better to face the truth now than let it fester. That's not how the pack will see it. I don't care how the pack sees it. He reached out, covering her hand with his. The touch sent electricity up her arm. I spent 6 years caring what everyone else thought, making decisions based on politics and fear. It cost me everything that mattered. I won't make that mistake again. Alara wanted to pull away, wanted to maintain the walls she'd built. But she was so tired of fighting, tired of being strong, tired of carrying everything alone. I don't know if I can do this, she whispered. Be here. Let you in. Risk trusting you again. Then don't trust me yet. His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. Just stay. Let me prove myself. That's all I'm asking. Before she could respond, Rowan stirred. Mama? His voice was small, thick with sleep and pain. Alara was at his side instantly, ignoring her protesting ribs. I'm here, baby. I'm right here. Rowan's eyes opened, finding hers. Then they shifted past her to Kael, widening with recognition and something that might have been fear. It's okay, Alara said quickly. He's here to help. Are you the king? Rowan asked, his voice steady despite his obvious pain. Yes. Kael moved closer but kept his distance, giving the boy space. And you're Rowan. How do you know my name? Your mother told me. And because you're my son. The words hung there, undeniable. Rowan studied Kael with those 2 knowing gray eyes that mirrored the king's own. The bad men said you didn't want us. That we're bastards. Alara flinched. Kael's expression went carefully blank. The bad men were wrong, he said, his voice gentler than she'd ever heard it. I didn't know you existed. If I had, I would have moved mountains to find you. Mama says people lie when they want something. Your mother is very wise. Kael glanced at Alara. And she's right to teach you to be cautious. But I'm not lying. You and your sister are my children. That makes you more important than anything else in this kingdom. More important than being king? The question was a trap, whether Rowan knew it or not. Kael didn't hesitate. Yes. Rowan considered this. Then, with the brutal honesty of childhood, you have my eyes. You have mine, Kael corrected gently. And my mother's stubborn chin, apparently, and probably my habit of asking difficult questions. Almost a smile touched Rowan's face. Then pain crossed it and he whimpered, clutching his broken arm. The healer will bring something for the pain, Kael said, already moving toward the door. And food, if you're hungry. Whatever you need. He left before Rowan could respond. Alara held her son, careful of his injuries, and wondered what kind of future she was building or destroying. 3 days passed in a blur of healing and tension. The executions happened at dawn as promised. Alara didn't attend but heard about it from servants who whispered in corners, how Marcus and his companions had been hanged in the village square, how Kyle had watched without expression, how the crowd had been silent with a mix of satisfaction and fear. The pack was divided. Some supported the king's decisive action. Others muttered about tyranny and overreach. The attack on Alara and the children had been horrific, but executing pack members over it set a precedent that made people nervous. Kyle didn't seem to care. He spent his days dealing with council business and his evenings with Rowan and Mira, teaching them to play strategy games, reading them stories, learning their quirks and preferences with the focused intensity he probably brought to everything. Rowan remained cautious, watching his father with analytical eyes that missed nothing. Mira fell in love immediately, charmed by the attention and the gifts and the sheer novelty of having a father who wanted to know her. Alara watched it all from the margins, her heart a tangled mess of hope and fear. Her mother remained in the healer's wing, unconscious more often than not. The head injury combined with her existing illness was slowly killing her. The healers gave her days, maybe a week. Alara sat with her every morning, holding a hand that grew lighter each day. "You should hate me," her mother whispered during one of her lucid moments, "for making you come back here." "I don't hate you. You should. I was selfish, wanted to see you one more time before I died." She coughed, the sound wet and wrong. "Didn't think about what it would cost you." "You gave me a reason to stop running." Alara squeezed her mother's hand gently. "That's not nothing." "Is he good to the children?" "Yes." "And to you?" Alara didn't know how to answer that. Kyle was careful with her, respectful. He didn't push or demand or assume, but there was something in his eyes when he looked at her, hunger maybe, or regret, or both. "He's trying," she said finally. "That's more than he did 6 years ago." Her mother's eyes drifted closed. "Don't waste this chance, Alara. Pride is cold comfort when you're alone." The words haunted her. On the 4th day, Lady Seraphine requested a private audience before her departure. Alara almost refused. What did she have to say to the woman Kyle had almost married? But curiosity won out over pride. They met in a small sitting room, neutral ground. Seraphine was beautiful in a way that made Alara feel small and rough, tall, elegant, with silver blonde hair and eyes like blue ice. She wore traveling clothes, but somehow made them look regal. "Thank you for seeing me," Seraphine said, her voice cultured and smooth. "I know this is awkward." "That's one word for it." Seraphine's lips curved into something that might have been a smile. "I wanted to meet you, the woman who inspired a king to destroy a strategic alliance." "I didn't inspire anything. I just showed up." "Don't sell yourself short." Seraphine settled into a chair with fluid grace. "Kyle spoke highly of you when he explained the situation. Said you were the strongest person he knew, that you'd survived things that would have broken most people." Alara didn't know what to say to that. "I'm not here to make threats or demand satisfaction," Seraphine continued. "The alliance is broken. I accept that. But I wanted you to know what you're walking into. I already know the pack hates me." "The pack is the least of your problems." Seraphine leaned forward. "My father is a proud man, powerful. He doesn't forgive insults, and ending this betrothal after 8 months of negotiations is an insult he'll feel deeply." Kyle said he was prepared for consequences. "Is he prepared for war?" Seraphine's eyes were sharp. "Because that's what my father will push for. Not immediately, he's too smart for that. But he'll find ways to weaken this territory, cut trade routes, form alliances with your enemies, make Kyle regret the choice to break faith." Cold dread settled in Alara's stomach. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you should know what your presence here costs, what those children will grow up navigating." Seraphine stood. "I don't blame you. You didn't ask for any of this. But choices have consequences, and this choice will echo for years." She moved toward the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, I hope it works out. I hope Kyle is right about you, because if he's not, he's just traded the stability of his kingdom for a woman who might not even stay." Then she was gone, leaving Alara alone with thoughts that felt like poison spreading through her veins. Was she worth a war? Worth the instability and danger her presence created? The children deserved their father, deserved acknowledgement and protection and a future without shame. But did they deserve to grow up in a kingdom torn apart by conflict? She didn't have answers. The council called an emergency session on the 5th day. Kale was required to attend. Ilara wasn't invited, which told her everything about how this would go. She paced the room where they'd been staying, ignoring her still healing ribs, anxiety clawing at her chest. Torin found her an hour later. "The council is demanding Kyle choose," he said without preamble. "You or the kingdom's stability." "That's not a real choice, isn't it?" Torin's scarred face was troubled. Seraphine's father has already sent word that he considers the broken alliance an act of bad faith. He's calling in allies, building support for economic sanctions at minimum, maybe military action if Kyle doesn't make amends. What kind of amends? Sending you away? Publicly denouncing the children as illegitimate, essentially undoing everything he's done this week. Ilara's blood ran cold. "He won't do that, won't he?" Torin stepped closer. "I've known Kyle his whole life. Watched him struggle with the weight of leadership. He's a good king, fair, strong, strategic, but he's also haunted by the choice he made 6 years ago. The guilt eats at him." So guilt makes people do irrational things. He's overcompensating now, trying to fix the past by sacrificing the future. But when reality sets in, when he sees the damage this is causing, he might make a different calculation. "You think he'll reject us again?" "I think he'll have to choose between his heart and his kingdom, and I don't know which way he'll fall." Torin's expression softened slightly. "I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm trying to prepare you for what might come." Ilara sank into a chair, feeling the weight of impossible choices crushing her. "What should I do?" "That depends on what you want. If you want to protect the children from political fallout, take them and leave before the council forces Kael's hand. If you want to fight for your place here, be prepared for a long battle that might destroy everything in the process. Those are terrible options. Welcome to politics." Torin moved toward the door. "Whatever you decide, do it soon. The council is voting tonight on whether to override Kael's authority regarding the children. If they succeed, they can declare them illegitimate by law, strip away any claim to the throne." He left. Ilara sat in silence, thinking about her children sleeping peacefully down the hall, about her dying mother who'd brought her back to this cursed place, about Kael and the impossible position she'd put him in just by existing. Pride is cold comfort when you're alone. Her mother's words echoed, but so did another voice, her own, from 6 years ago, young and broken and determined. "I will survive. I will protect them. I will not let anyone make me feel worthless ever again." She'd survive by leaving. Maybe it was time to survive by staying and fighting, even if the fight destroyed everything. The council chamber was chaos when she arrived. Ilara pushed through the heavy doors without invitation, without permission, her ribs screaming in protest but her spine straight. 12 pairs of eyes turned to her, shocked, outraged. Kyle stood on the central platform, arguing with Elder Morthen. He stopped mid-sentence when he saw her, something like fear crossing his face. "Ilara, what are you—" "I'm here to speak," she announced, her voice carrying through the chamber. "Since you're all discussing my children's future without me." "You have no right to be here," Morthen said coldly. "This is a closed council session, and these are my children you're debating. That gives me every right." She walked forward, ignoring the pain, ignoring the hostile stares. "I understand there's a vote tonight, on legitimacy." "There is," Lyra said from the third tier, her voice sharp. "We're voting on whether the king has the authority to unilaterally declare children legitimate without council approval and proper verification." "So verify them." Ilara spread her hands. "Test their blood. Use whatever magic or science you have. I have nothing to hide." "It's not about verification," another council member said. "It's about precedent, about whether personal relationships can override political necessity. My children aren't a political relationship. They're human beings who deserve to know their father." "Sentiment doesn't govern kingdoms," Morthen said. "Strategy does. Alliances do. And right now, acknowledging these children threatens both." "Because of the Northern Territory?" "Because of multiple territories," Lyra corrected. "Seraphine's father is influential. Breaking that alliance sent a message that our king values personal desires over strategic partnerships. Other alphas are watching, wondering if they can trust any agreements we make. Elara looked at Kael. He met her eyes, his expression agonized. This was the moment. The choice Torin had warned her about. She could make it easy for him. Walk away. Take the children and disappear. Let him rebuild his alliances and his reputation. Or she could fight. Then let me make this simple, she said, turning to address the council. I don't want your throne. Don't want your politics or your power games. All I want is for my children to have a father who acknowledges them, who protects them, who doesn't make them grow up ashamed of who they are. Noble sentiment, Morthen said dryly, but it doesn't address the larger issues. I'm not finished. Elara's voice hardened. You're right that sentiment doesn't govern kingdoms, but neither does fear. And that's what's really driving this vote. You're afraid. Afraid of change, afraid of consequences, afraid of a king who might actually choose something other than political convenience. How dare you? I dare because I have nothing left to lose. She stepped closer to the platform. I've been rejected, exiled, attacked in my own home. I've watched my children suffer because of choices other people made. So yes, I dare. I dare to stand here and demand that you see them as more than political complications. Silence fell. Even Morthan looked taken aback. The vote will proceed, he said finally. Your speech, however moving, doesn't change the law. Then change the law, Kael said quietly. Every head turned to him. What? Morthan asked. Change the law. Kael's voice grew stronger. You want precedent? I'll give you precedent. From this day forward, any child with verified royal blood is automatically legitimate, regardless of the circumstances of their birth or their mother's status. No council vote required. No political considerations, just truth. The chamber erupted. Council members shouted, arguing, some supporting the radical proposal, others calling it madness. You can't rewrite centuries of law. I can and I am, Kael said, his voice cutting through the chaos. I'm the king. These laws exist to serve the kingdom, not trap it in outdated thinking. This isn't about outdated thinking, Lyra argued. This is about you making reckless decisions based on guilt. You're right. Kael's admission silenced everyone. I am driven by guilt. Guilt over failing these children 6 years ago. Guilt over failing their mother. But that doesn't make this decision wrong. It makes it necessary. He turned to Elara, his eyes holding hers. I made a choice 6 years ago that destroyed the best thing in my life. I chose duty over truth, politics over people. And every day since then has been a slow death of everything I actually valued. He paused. I won't make that choice again. Not for a council, not for alliances, not for anything. Even if it costs you the throne? Morthen asked. Even then. The words fell like a bomb into the chamber. For a long moment no one spoke. Then Morthen stood. Very well. If that's your final position, then this council has no choice but to call for a vote of no confidence, to determine whether you're fit to continue ruling. Kael didn't flinch. So be it. Elara's heart stopped. Kael, no. It's already decided. He looked at her, something fierce and certain in his eyes. I'm done sacrificing what matters for what's convenient. But the kingdom will survive. It survived before me. It'll survive after me. He stepped down from the platform, walking toward her. But I won't survive losing you again. Losing them. So if the council wants my throne in exchange for my family, they can have it. The chamber fell into stunned silence. This was insanity. Kings didn't abdicate over personal matters, didn't throw away power for sentiment. But Kael was looking at her like she was the only person in the room, the only thing that mattered, and something in Elara's chest cracked open. The vote will take place tomorrow, Morthen said, his voice tight with barely controlled fury. All council members will cast their decision on whether King Kael Draven is fit to rule. If the majority votes no confidence, he'll be removed from power and a new alpha will be chosen. Kael nodded. Understood. He took Elara's hand and led her from the chamber. Behind them, chaos erupted again. Voices raised in argument, in shock, in fear of what came next. But Elara barely heard it. All she could focus on was the warmth of Kael's hand in hers, and the terrible certainty that tomorrow, everything would change. They didn't speak until they reached his private quarters. The moment the door closed, Alara rounded on him. "Are you insane? You just gave them permission to take your throne." "I gave them a choice," Kael corrected, "between supporting their king or replacing him. And you think they'll choose you, after you dissolved a major alliance and rewrote succession law in 1 week? I don't know." He crossed to the window, looking out over the valley below. "Maybe not. Maybe I've pushed too far too fast." "Then why do it?" "Because the alternative was living the rest of my life as a coward." He turned back to her. 6 years ago, I let fear control me. Fear of what the council would think. Fear of appearing weak. Fear of choosing wrong. And it destroyed us. I won't let fear win again." Alara's anger drained away, leaving only exhaustion and something dangerously close to hope. "What if they vote against you?" "Then I'll step down. Take you and the children somewhere far from here. Live as a normal family." He stepped closer. "Would that be so terrible?" "You're a king, Kael. It's who you are. You can't just walk away from that." "I can if the alternative is walking away from you again." The words hung between them, raw and honest and terrifying. Alara's throat tightened. "I'm not worth a throne." "You're worth everything." He reached up, cupping her face with one hand. "And so are those children. I've spent 6 years learning that lesson the hard way. I won't forget it again." She should step back, should maintain distance, should protect herself from the inevitable pain of hoping, but she was so tired of protecting herself, so tired of being alone. "Promise me something," she whispered. "Anything. Promise me that whatever happens tomorrow, you won't regret this. Won't blame me for what you're sacrificing. The only thing I regret is not doing this 6 years ago." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "You're not a sacrifice, Alara. You're the reason everything else matters." Then he kissed her, gentle at first, almost tentative, like he was afraid she might disappear. But when she didn't pull away, when she kissed him back with 6 years of buried longing, it deepened into something desperate and necessary. They broke apart, breathing hard, foreheads pressed together. "Stay," he murmured, "whatever happens tomorrow. Stay." She wanted to say yes, wanted it so badly it hurt. But before she could answer, the door burst open. Torin stood there, his face ashen. "My king, we have a problem." Kael stepped back, instantly alert. "What?" "It's the Northern Alpha. He's here, with an army, camped 2 miles from the village border. He's demanding an audience." The room went cold. "How many?" Kael asked. 500 warriors. Maybe more." Torin's jaw was tight. "He sent a message, said he's come to discuss the insult to his daughter and his house. And if the discussion doesn't satisfy him, he's prepared to take satisfaction by force." Alara's blood turned to ice. This was it. The consequence Seraphine had warned about. War had come to their doorstep, and it was all because of her. War had come to their doorstep, and it was all because of her. The words echoed in Alara's mind as she stood frozen in Kael's quarters, watching him transform from the man who'd just kissed her into the king who commanded armies. His expression hardened, shoulders squaring, every soft edge disappearing beneath the weight of leadership. "How long until they reach the village?" he asked Torin. "If they wanted to attack, they'd already be here. They're waiting, making a statement." Torin's scarred face was grim. "Alpha Aldrich sent a formal challenge. He wants to meet at dawn, neutral ground. You, him, and whatever witnesses you both choose." "It's a trap," Kael said flatly. "Probably, but refusing makes us look weak, like we're afraid to face the consequences of our choices." "Our choices?" Alara heard the plural but felt the singular weight crushing her chest. "This is my fault," she said quietly. Both men turned to her like they'd forgotten she was there. "No," Kael started. "It is." She stepped forward, her healing ribs protesting. "He's here because you broke the betrothal, because of me and the children. If I hadn't come back, then I'd still be living a lie," Kael interrupted. "And those children would still be growing up ashamed of who they are. This isn't on you, Alara. It's on me. I made the choice. I'll face the consequences. With an army at your doorstep and a council ready to vote you out tomorrow?" She laughed, the sound bitter. "You're going to lose everything." "Then I lose everything." His eyes held hers, unwavering. But I won't lose you again. Not for an alliance, not for a throne, not for anything. The conviction in his voice should have been comforting. Instead, it felt like drowning. I need air, she said abruptly, moving toward the door. Elara, just give me a minute, please. She left before either man could stop her, her feet carrying her through corridors that were becoming familiar, despite her resistance. Guards nodded as she passed, their expressions ranging from respectful to suspicious. Everyone knew who she was now, the woman who'd brought chaos to their ordered world. She found herself in the healer's wing without consciously deciding to go there. Her mother lay in the same bed, smaller somehow, like the illness was consuming her from the inside out. Her breathing was shallow, rattling, a death sound. Elara sank into the chair beside the bed and took her mother's hand. I've made a mess of everything, she whispered to the unconscious woman, just like you said I would. Her mother's eyes fluttered open, unfocused at first, then sharpening with effort. You're still here, she rasped. Where else would I be? Running, like you always do when things get hard. No judgment in the words, just observation. Maybe I should run, take the children and disappear before this turns into bloodshed. Her mother's grip tightened with surprising strength. Is that what you want? To spend the rest of your life hiding? I want my children safe. Safe isn't the same as free. Her mother coughed, the sound wet and wrong. I spent my whole life playing it safe. Married a man I didn't love because he was stable. Stayed in this village even after he died because leaving was scary. Know what it got me? What? Regret. So much regret I can taste it. Her eyes found Elara's. Don't be like me, girl. Don't choose safety over truth. Don't choose hiding over living. But the children will learn from what you do, not what you say. You want them to grow up brave? Then be brave. Another cough, this one bringing up blood. You want them to fight for what matters? Then fight. I don't know how to fight an army. Then fight smarter. Her mother's eyes drifted closed. You've always been smart, Elara. Smarter than me. Smarter than most people give you credit for. Use it. The words faded into labored breathing. Elara sat there holding her mother's hand, thinking about bravery and truth and fighting smart instead of hard. An idea began to form. Reckless, dangerous, possibly insane. But maybe, just maybe, it could work. She found Kael in the war room, bent over maps with Torin and several military advisors. They were discussing defensive positions, supply lines, evacuation routes for civilians if things went badly, planning for war. I want to meet with him, Elara announced from the doorway. Every head turned. Absolutely not, Kael said immediately. It's not your decision. Like hell it isn't. Alpha Aldrich is dangerous, unpredictable. He didn't bring 500 warriors for a pleasant conversation. He brought them because his pride was wounded, because his daughter was rejected and he needs to save face. Elara moved into the room, ignoring the advisor's shocked expressions. But what if there's a way for him to save face without spilling blood? There isn't, one of the advisors said bluntly. He issued a formal challenge. The only resolution is combat or complete capitulation. For a third option, Elara looked at Kael. Let me talk to him. Woman to woman. No armies, no posturing, just honesty. He won't meet with you, and Torin said, though he looked intrigued. You are not a recognized authority. No offense. Then make me one. She turned to Kael. You said you wanted to acknowledge me as the mother of your heirs. Do it, publicly. Give me an official title that requires Aldrich to at least hear me out. Kael stared at her like she'd lost her mind. You want me to make you, what, queen? Not queen. That's too much too fast and would only inflame things. Her mind raced, the plan solidifying. But recognized consort, mother of acknowledged royal heirs, someone with enough status that insulting me by refusing an audience would be its own slight. That's insane, an advisor muttered. It's brilliant, Torin said slowly. Aldrich came here expecting either a fight or groveling. This gives him neither. It's unexpected enough that he might actually agree to it out of curiosity. And if he doesn't? Kael asked. If he refuses, or worse, if he agrees and then uses it as an opportunity to harm you, then you'll have your war. But at least we tried something other than violence first. Elara stepped closer to him. You said you wouldn't lose me again. This is how you prove it. by trusting me to fight my own battles. The room fell silent. Kael's jaw worked, emotions warring across his face. Fear, pride, frustration. Something that looked like love. "If he hurts you," he said finally, his voice low and dangerous, "there won't be enough left of him to bury." "I'll take that as a yes." The announcement went out at midnight. By royal decree, Alara Vance was formally recognized as the king's consort and mother of his acknowledged heirs, Rowan and Mira Draven. She would speak with the king's full authority in all matters concerning the children and would be afforded the respect and protection due to her position. The village erupted in gossip. The council went apoplectic, calling emergency sessions and demanding Kael explain himself. And Alpha Aldrich, camped with his army 2 miles away, sent word that he would grant the consort an audience. Alone. At dawn in the clearing between their forces. "I don't like this," Kael said for the 10th time as Alara prepared to leave. "You don't have to like it. You just have to let me try." "He could kill you." "He could, but he won't." She adjusted the formal cloak Kael had insisted she wear, deep gray with silver threading, the Draven colors. "Killing me gains him nothing except a war he might not win. Aldrich isn't stupid. He's angry and insulted, but he's not stupid." "How can you be sure?" "Because Seraphine warned me. She said her father was proud, not reckless, that he'd find ways to weaken you without direct confrontation." Alara met Kael's eyes. "This is his power play, forcing you to send me out there alone, making you look weak. But if I come back with a solution, he looks magnanimous and you look strong for trusting me. Everyone wins. Except if you die. Then you get your war and your martyred cause. Either way, the political situation resolves." She tried to smile, but it felt wrong. "Dark humor, sorry." Kael pulled her close, careful of her still healing ribs, and kissed her forehead. "Come back to me." "I will." She left before she could lose her nerve. The walk to the clearing felt endless. Guards escorted her to the boundary, then stopped, forbidden from going further. Neutral ground meant truly neutral. No weapons, no warriors, just 2 people talking. Dawn was breaking as Alara stepped into the clearing alone. Alpha Aldrich waited on the other side. He was older than she expected, maybe 60, with gray hair and a beard that reached his chest. But his eyes were sharp as broken glass, and his presence radiated the kind of power that came from decades of command. "So," he said as she approached, his voice carrying easily across the space between them, "you're the woman worth destroying an alliance over." "I didn't ask to be worth anything. I just wanted to raise my children in peace." "Peace?" He laughed, the sound without humor. "You bring chaos to a kingdom, upend months of careful planning, and call it peace?" "I brought truth. The chaos was already here, buried under politics and lies." She stopped 10 feet away, close enough to talk but far enough to run if needed. "Your daughter understood that. My daughter is young and idealistic. She sees honor in honesty." Aldrich's expression hardened. "I see strategy, and this," he gestured at her, at the situation, "is terrible strategy." "Then why are you here? If Kael made such a terrible choice, why not just attack? Why grant me an audience?" "Because I want to understand what kind of woman inspires a king to commit political suicide." He studied her like she was a puzzle to solve. "Seraphine said you were strong, brave, that you'd survive things that should have broken you. I wanted to see for myself if she was right. And you're either the bravest woman I've ever met or the most foolish. I haven't decided which." Alara took a breath, steadying herself. "What if I could offer you something better than war? Better than crushing a kingdom that insulted my house?" "I'm listening." "Your daughter wasn't rejected because she was lacking. She was rejected because Kael already had a fated mate and children he didn't know about. It had nothing to do with her worth and everything to do with circumstances beyond anyone's control." "That doesn't change the insult." "No. But what if instead of losing an alliance entirely, you gained a different one?" She took a step closer. "Kael still needs allies. The Northern Territory is still powerful. What if instead of a marriage alliance, we created a treaty alliance? Trade agreements, mutual defense pacts, cultural exchanges. Treaties can be broken, so can marriages. Ask anyone who's been divorced. she pressed on. But what if we made it more binding? What if your daughter, instead of being queen here, became an ambassador, a recognized voice in Kael's court, helping to bridge our territories and build something lasting? Aldrich's eyes narrowed. You're suggesting I accept a lesser position for my daughter. I'm suggesting she accept a position with actual power instead of symbolic power. Queens smile and look pretty. Ambassadors shape policy and build futures. Alara held his gaze. Seraphine is smart, educated, skilled in diplomacy. She deserves more than being decorative. For a long moment, Aldrich said nothing. Then slowly, he smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. You're clever, I'll give you that, turning an insult into an opportunity. He paused. But it doesn't address the fundamental problem. Your king broke faith, ended negotiations after 8 months of good faith dealing. Why should I trust anything he promises now? Because I'll guarantee it. You, me, the children, our lives as collateral. She spoke the words before she could reconsider them. If Kael breaks any treaty we establish, if he acts in bad faith against the Northern Territory, then you have the right to demand satisfaction. From me, personally. You're offering yourself as a hostage. I'm offering myself as proof of commitment. There's a difference. Aldrich studied her for a long, silent moment. Then he laughed, a real laugh this time, surprised and almost admiring. You are either brilliant or insane, possibly both. He shook his head. Do you have any idea what you just offered? Yes, I offered you something more valuable than my death. I offered you leverage over a king who's proven he'll sacrifice anything for his family. She stepped closer. You could kill me right now and start a war. Or you could accept my proposal and gain a permanent hold over Kael's decision-making. Which serves your interests better? The question hung in the air. Aldrich walked slowly around her, examining her like livestock at auction. She forced herself to stand still, to not show the terror clawing at her throat. I'll consider your proposal, he said finally. But I want something else. Something immediate. What? A public apology. From your king, in front of both our armies, acknowledging that he acted hastily, that my daughter deserved better treatment, and that he values the Northern Territory's friendship. Alara's stomach dropped. Kael would hate that. Public apologies from kings were rare, seen as weakness. And if he refuses, then we'll have our war, Aldrich smiled. But if he agrees, if he humbles himself publicly for you, then I'll know he's serious about this new path, and I'll accept your treaty proposal. It was a test of Kael's commitment, of how far he'd go to avoid bloodshed. I'll bring him your terms, Alara said. You have until noon. After that, I'll assume the answer is no and act accordingly. He walked away without another word, leaving Alara alone in the clearing as the sun climbed higher. Kael's reaction was exactly what she expected. Absolutely not. They stood in his quarters, the door closed against listening ears. Torin waited outside, giving them privacy for the explosion. It's just words, Alara argued. Swallow your pride for 5 minutes and we avoid a war. It's not about pride. It's about respect. If I publicly apologize, every alpha in the region will see it as weakness. They'll test me, push boundaries, see what else they can force me to concede. And if you don't, hundreds of people will die, including possibly me and the children when Aldrich's army marches through. That stopped him. Kael ran his hands through his hair, frustration radiating from every line of his body. There has to be another way. There isn't. I offered everything I could think of. This is his price. She moved closer. You said you'd sacrifice anything for us. Prove it. You're asking me to humiliate myself. I'm asking you to be smart instead of proud. She took his hand. 6 years ago, you chose pride over me, over us. Don't make the same mistake twice. The words hit their mark. She saw it in the way he flinched. That's not fair, he said quietly. No, but it's true. She squeezed his hand. This isn't about you, Kael. It's about everyone in this kingdom who will suffer if we go to war, including our children. His resistance crumbled. She could see it happening, walls falling one by one. If I do this, he said finally, the council will use it against me. In tomorrow's vote, they'll say I'm weak, unfit to rule. Then let them. We'll figure out the council after we avoid the war. She paused. Unless the throne matters more than I do. You know it doesn't. Then show me. At noon, both armies gathered in the field between their camps. 500 northern warriors on one side, all of them armed and ready. 300 of Kael's forces on the other, outnumbered but holding their ground. Between them, a small platform had been erected. Neutral ground. Kael stood on it, Alara beside him. Aldrich faced them from 10 feet away, Seraphine at his side. The entire valley had gone silent. Alpha Aldrich, Kael said, his voice carrying across the field. I have wronged you and your daughter. I entered into alliance negotiations in good faith, then ended them abruptly when personal circumstances changed. For that, I apologize. Your daughter deserved better treatment. You deserved honest communication from the beginning. I failed to provide either. The words fell like stones. On Kael's side, soldiers shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't how kings spoke. This was vulnerability in a world that saw vulnerability as fatal. On Aldrich's side, warriors watched with predatory interest, sensing weakness. I cannot change what I did, Kael continued, but I can commit to a better path forward, if you're willing to consider it. Aldrich let the silence stretch. Let Kael's words hang in the air, exposed and uncomfortable. Then he spoke. Your consort came to me this morning with a proposal. A treaty alliance instead of a marriage bond. My daughter as ambassador instead of queen. He glanced at Seraphine. My daughter has expressed interest in this arrangement. She believes it offers her more meaningful work than sitting on a throne wearing pretty dresses. A ripple of surprise ran through both armies. I'm willing to consider this new alliance, Aldrich continued. On one condition beyond the public apology you've just made. Name it, Kael said. Your consort offered herself as collateral. Her life and the lives of her children as guarantee against future bad faith. Aldrich's eyes gleamed. I want that in writing, legally binding. If you ever break treaty with the Northern Territory, I have the right to demand satisfaction from her personally. Murmurs erupted. Soldiers on both sides shifted, uncertain how to react. Alara felt Kael's hand tighten on hers. She squeezed back, held firm. Agreed, Kael said, his voice steady despite the cost. It will be written into the treaty and signed by both of us. Aldrich nodded slowly. Then he did something unexpected. He smiled. A real smile, warm and almost friendly. You're a braver man than I gave you credit for, he said. And your consort is far cleverer than I expected. Very well. We have an agreement. The Northern Territory will withdraw its forces and send diplomatic envoys to negotiate the full treaty terms. The tension broke like a snapped bowstring. Soldiers on both sides sagged with relief. War had been avoided. Aldrich stepped forward, offering his hand to Kael. They clasped forearms in the traditional gesture of alliance between alphas. Then Aldrich turned to Alara. You took a terrible risk coming to me this morning, offering what you did. He studied her face. Why? Because I'm tired of other people fighting my battles. And because those children deserve to grow up in peace, not in a kingdom torn apart by war I helped cause. You didn't cause this. I started it by existing, by coming back, by being inconvenient. She met his eyes. But I'm done apologizing for existing. So I figured I'd try to fix things instead. Aldrich laughed, the sound genuine and surprised. Seraphine was right about you. You're going to turn this kingdom upside down. That's the plan. He bowed slightly, a gesture of respect between equals, and walked back to his forces. Seraphine lingered a moment longer. That was well done, she said quietly. I wasn't sure you had it in you. Neither was I, Alara admitted. For what it's worth, I think you'll be good for him. Keep him honest, keep him humble. Seraphine's expression softened slightly. And if you ever need an ally, you have one in the Northern Territory. I meant what I said before. I hope this works out. Thank you. Seraphine followed her father, leaving Alara and Kael alone on the platform as both armies began to disperse. The crisis was over. For now, Kael turned to her, his expression unreadable. What you did, offering yourself as collateral without consulting me, was necessary, she interrupted, and effective. Was terrifying. I thought I was going to watch you die. His voice cracked slightly. Don't ever do that again. I can't promise that. If protecting our children means taking risks, I'll take them. He pulled her close despite the watching eyes, despite protocol and propriety, kissed her forehead, her cheek, her mouth with desperate relief. You're going to kill me with worry, he muttered against her hair. Better worry than regret. They stood there holding each other as the sun climbed higher and the armies retreated. One crisis averted, one more to go. The council vote happened at sunset. Alara wasn't allowed in the chamber this time. She waited outside with the children who'd been brought from the healer's wing, where they'd spent the day with her mother. Rowan sat quietly beside her, his broken arm cradled against his chest. Mira fidgeted, full of nervous energy. Is father going to lose? Rowan asked. I don't know, sweetheart. What happens if he does? Then we figure out a different path, together. Mira crawled into her lap, careful of her injured ribs. I don't want to leave. I like it here. I know, baby. The other children are still mean to me. They call us names, but the castle is pretty and there's so much food and father tells good stories. Alara's chest tightened. Her daughter had already started thinking of this place as home, as somewhere she belonged despite the hostility. The door opened. Torin emerged, his scarred face giving nothing away. Alara stood, her heart hammering. Well? The vote was 7-5 against the king. The world tilted. He lost, Alara whispered. He lost the council's confidence, but before they could formally call for his removal, something unexpected happened. Torin's expression shifted into something that might have been a smile. 3 of the council members resigned, immediately, on the spot, said they wouldn't be part of a council that valued politics over truth. Which 3? Lyra, Marcus's uncle, and Elder Gareth, who served on the council for 30 years. Torin paused. Without them, there's no quorum. The vote is invalid, and the king has declared that any new council appointments will require his direct approval plus a public confirmation process. Understanding dawned. He's restructuring the whole system, completely. No more shadow governance. No more decisions made behind closed doors by people who've held power for decades. Torin's smile widened. Your king just staged a political revolution, and he's using the crisis you helped avert as justification for why change is necessary. Is he... Alara couldn't finish the question. Still the king? Yes. Stronger than before? Absolutely. The army loves him for avoiding war, the civilians love him for standing up to the council, and the remaining council members are terrified of losing their positions if they push too hard. Torin looked at her with something like respect. You did that. You gave him the leverage he needed to change everything. The door opened again. Kael emerged, looking exhausted but triumphant. His eyes found hers immediately. It's done, he said simply. Torin told me. The kingdom is about to change. Dramatically. It's going to be messy and complicated, and there will be resistance. He stepped closer. But it's the right change. The necessary one. Rowan stood up. Does this mean we can stay? Kael knelt down, bringing himself to eye level with his son. If you want to stay, yes. If your mother wants to stay, yes. This is your home now, for as long as you want it to be. Mira launched herself at Kael, wrapping her small arms around his neck. He caught her, holding her close, his expression softening in ways Alara had never seen. We want to stay, Mira declared. Right, Rowan? Rowan considered, serious as always, then nodded. Yes, we want to stay. Alara? Kael looked at her over Mira's head. What do you want? 6 years ago, she'd wanted safety, survival, distance from the pain. Now she wanted something different. I want to stay, she said quietly. I want to build something here, something real, not based on fate or bonds or destiny, just choice. Choice, Kael repeated. I can work with that. He stood, still holding Mira, and offered his free hand to Alara. She took it. Together, with Rowan following, they walked through the stronghold that was beginning to feel like it might actually become home. Behind them, the old order was crumbling. Ahead, something new was being built from the ashes of what had been. It wouldn't be easy. There would be more challenges, more resistance, more moments of doubt. But for the first time in 6 years, Alara felt something she'd thought lost forever. Hope. Not the fragile, desperate kind that shattered at the first setback, the solid, earned kind that came from fighting for what mattered and winning. She'd survived the worst, faced down an army, stood up to a council. Whatever came next, she'd face it the same way. Not with destiny or fate or bonds she didn't choose, but with courage, truth, and the family she'd fought like hell to protect. And this time, no one, not the council, not rival alphas, not even her own fear, would take that from her. The words felt like a promise Alara wasn't sure she could keep as she walked through the stronghold with Kael and the children. Victory should have felt sweeter. They'd avoided war, survived the council vote, secured a new alliance. By any measure, they'd won. So why did it feel like the real battle was just beginning? The next morning brought her answer. Alara woke to shouting outside the stronghold walls. Not the organized kind that came with military drills, but the chaotic fury of a mob. She went to the window, her still healing ribs protesting, and looked down at the gathering crowd. 50 people, maybe more. Villagers from Greystone and surrounding settlements, carrying signs with words she could read even from this height. Protect our pack. No foreign influence. Traditional values. They weren't protesting the Northern Alliance. They were protesting her. It's been building since the executions, Torn said from the doorway. He looked like he hadn't slept. People are scared. 3 pack members hanged for attacking you. The council in chaos. Alliance structures changing. They need someone to blame. So they blame the outsider who caused it all. Alara turned from the window. Where's Kael? Dealing with it. He's going to address the crowd personally. That's a mistake. It'll look like he's choosing me over them again. He is choosing you over them. Torn's scarred face was unreadable. Question is whether he can make them understand why. Alara grabbed her cloak. I'm going with him. That's an even bigger mistake. Probably. But I'm done hiding while other people fight my battles. She found Kael in the main hall, surrounded by the remaining council members and military advisors. All of them arguing at once about the best way to handle the situation. Disperse them by force. That'll only make things worse. We need to show strength. We need to show compassion. Enough. Kael's voice cut through the chaos. I'm going out there, alone, to talk to them. My king, that's not alone, Alara interrupted from the doorway. Together. We go together. Every head turned. Kael's expression shifted from surprise to something that looked like pride mixed with exasperation. Alara, this could get violent. Then we'll face it together, like everything else. She walked toward him, ignoring the stares. You can't keep shielding me from the consequences of existing. If they hate me, they need to see me, see us, see that we're not going anywhere. She's right, Torn said quietly. Hiding her makes her look guilty, like she's something to be ashamed of. Kael's jaw worked. If anything happens, then you'll handle it. But nothing will happen if we're smart about this. Alara took his hand. Trust me, one more time. He did. They walked out together to face the crowd. The mob grew quiet as the stronghold gates opened. Alara could feel hundreds of eyes on her, weighing her, judging her. She kept her chin up, her spine straight, refusing to show the fear crawling up her throat. Kael stopped at the top of the stone steps leading down to the courtyard. Close enough to be heard, far enough to retreat if needed. I hear your concerns, he called out, his voice carrying across the crowd. You're scared, uncertain about the changes happening. You want to protect what you know. We want to protect our pack, someone shouted. A woman, middle-aged, with the kind of righteous fury that came from genuine belief. Not some outsider who's turning everything upside down. Alara isn't an outsider. She was born here, raised here. She's one of you. She left, another voice yelled. Abandoned us and came crawling back when it suited her. I didn't leave, Alara said, her voice not as loud as Kael's, but clear enough. I was forced out, rejected by this pack, by the council that called me unfit. I survived alone because no one here would help me. Because you weren't good enough for our king. The words hit like a slap, but Alara didn't flinch. You're right. I wasn't good enough. Not for your politics or your alliances or your carefully planned futures. I was poor, common, inconvenient. She paused. But I was good enough to be his fated mate. Good enough to bear his children. And apparently good enough to survive 6 years alone while all of you went on with your comfortable lives. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some angry, some uncertain. Those children, the first woman said, pointing an accusatory finger, they're proof of your shame. Born out of wedlock, hidden away, now paraded as heirs. Those children, Kyle interrupted, his voice dropping to something dangerous, are my son and daughter. They carry my blood, my name, and my protection. Speaking against them is speaking against me. Then you're not the king we thought you were. The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Kyle descended the steps slowly, deliberately. The crowd shifted, some people backing away, others holding their ground. You're right, he said, his voice quieter now, but somehow more powerful. I'm not the king you thought I was. The king you knew would have married for alliances, would have prioritized politics over truth, would have let fear and tradition dictate every choice. He stopped at the bottom of the steps. That king would have been easier to predict, more comfortable, and he would have been living a lie. So you're saying we should celebrate you rejecting duty? I'm saying duty without truth is just obedience. And obedience without question is how packs stagnate and die. Kale's eyes swept the crowd. You want to protect your pack. So do I. But I won't do it by sacrificing the people who matter most. Not anymore. Those people should be us, someone shouted. Your pack, not some woman and her bastards. Elara felt Kale tense beside her, felt the fury radiating off him in waves. But before he could respond, a voice cut through from the back of the crowd. Those bastards saved my son's life. The crowd parted. A man pushed through, older, weathered, carrying a small boy who couldn't have been more than 3. Who are you? Kyle asked. Gareth. I worked the northern fields. 3 days ago, my boy fell through ice on the river. He was drowning. The man's voice shook. Your son, Rowan, he was playing nearby. Small as he is, with a broken arm, he still jumped in, pulled my boy to the edge, held him until help came. Silence fell. I didn't know, Elara whispered. The boy didn't tell you because he said it wasn't special, said anyone would have done it. Gareth looked at the crowd. But half of you walk past that river every day. None of you saw my son fall. None of you would have jumped in even if you had, because the ice was thin and dangerous. He turned to Elara. Your son risked his life for mine. Didn't know him. Didn't owe him anything. Just did it because it needed doing. Alara's throat tightened. That was Rowan exactly. Quiet, observant, and braver than anyone gave him credit for. One good deed doesn't erase the problems she's caused, the angry woman said, but her voice had lost some of its certainty. Doesn't it matter at all? Gareth challenged. She raised a boy who values life over safety, who acts instead of watching. Those are pack values, our values. More murmurs. The crowd was shifting, the certainty cracking. I'm not asking you to love me, Elara said into the uncertain silence. I'm not asking you to forget the past or pretend everything's fine. I'm just asking you to give us a chance, to see what we build instead of what we disrupted. And if what you build destroys what we have, then hold me accountable. I've already put my life on the line as collateral for the Northern Alliance. I'll do the same here. She looked at Kyle. If my presence here causes more harm than good, I'll leave. Voluntarily. No fight. No resistance. No, Kyle said immediately. It's my choice to make. She squeezed his hand. Just like it's their choice whether to accept me. You can't force people to want me here, Kyle. They have to choose it. The crowd had gone quiet again, watching this exchange with something like fascination. The angry woman stepped forward. Up close, Elara could see the fear in her eyes beneath the fury. How do we know you won't leave again? That you won't take those children and disappear the moment things get hard? You don't know, Elara admitted. I can't prove what I'll do in the future. All I can do is show you what I'm doing now. Staying, fighting, building a life here despite everything. She paused. I ran once because I was scared and hurt and alone. I'm not alone anymore, and I'm done running from fear. The woman studied her for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. I'll be watching. We all will. That's all I ask. The crowd began to disperse. Not happy, not converted, but no longer actively hostile. It was progress. Gareth approached with his son before leaving. Thank you, he said to Elara, for raising a good boy. We need more like him. Thank your son, Alara said, "for giving Rowan a reason to be brave." When the courtyard finally emptied, Alara sagged against Kael, exhaustion crashing over her. "You shouldn't have offered to leave," he said quietly. "I had to give them something, a choice, not an ultimatum." She looked up at him. "You can't rule through fear and force forever. Eventually, people have to want what you're building. And if they don't, then we keep trying, keep showing them why it matters." She managed a tired smile. "Besides, I'm not planning to fail. Those people want to watch me prove I belong here? Fine. I'll prove it every single day." Her mother died 3 days later. Peacefully, in her sleep, with Alara holding her hand and Rowan and Mira curled up at the foot of the bed. The healers said it was a mercy. The illness would have caused far more suffering if it had continued. Alara felt numb. They burned her mother on a pyre at sunset, traditional Pack funeral rites. The entire village attended, which surprised Alara until she realized they'd come for tradition, not for the woman. Her mother had never been particularly liked, but she'd been part of the Pack for 40 years, and that counted for something. Kael stood beside Alara as the flames consumed the body. Rowan and Mira clung to her sides, too young to fully understand death, but old enough to know something important had ended. "She told me to be brave," Alara said quietly, as smoke rose toward darkening skies. "To fight instead of hide. To choose truth over safety." She was wise. She was bitter and angry and full of regret. Alara's voice cracked. But at the end, she was right about the things that mattered. Kael's arm came around her shoulders, solid and warm and real. She leaned into him, letting herself be held for the first time since childhood. The fire burned through the night. By morning, only ashes remained. Alara scattered them on the ridge where the cottage had stood, the place her mother had spent most of her life. It seemed fitting. "What will you do with the cottage?" Kael asked. "Tear it down. Build something else. Something better." She looked at the ruins. "I don't want the children remembering this place as home. It was survival, not living. Where will home be?" "Here, the stronghold." She turned to face him. "If you'll have us, permanently. There's nothing I want more." He paused. "But I need to know you're sure. That you're staying because you want to, not because you feel obligated. I'm staying because my children deserve a father who knows their favorite foods and their fears and their dreams. I'm staying because this kingdom is changing into something that might actually be worth belonging to." She stepped closer. "And I'm staying because 6 years ago, I walked away from you thinking it was the brave choice. Turns out the brave choice is staying and fighting for what matters." Kael kissed her then, soft and slow and full of promise. When they broke apart, Rowan was watching them with his analytical gray eyes. "Are you going to marry her?" he asked his father bluntly. Kael looked at Alara. "Would you want that?" "Eventually, maybe, when it's not about politics or alliances or proving anything to anyone," she smiled. "When it's just us choosing each other because we want to." "I can wait for that." "Good. Because I'm not ready yet." She took both his hands. "But ask me again in 6 months. A year. When we've built something real instead of trying to fix something broken." What's it? 6 months passed like water over stones, slowly reshaping everything it touched. The new council formed with members chosen through public nomination and confirmation. Some old guard remained, humbled and more careful. New voices joined, younger, more diverse, including 2 women and a man from the poorest district who'd never imagined having political power. The treaty with the Northern Territory was signed with full ceremony. Seraphine arrived as promised ambassador, bringing trade agreements and cultural exchanges that benefited both kingdoms. She and Alara developed a cautious friendship built on mutual respect and the understanding that they'd both survived being pawns in other people's games. The village slowly, grudgingly, began to accept Alara's presence. Not with warmth, but with tolerance that gradually shifted toward acknowledgement. She spent her days working with healers to expand their services to poorer districts, organized a school for children whose families couldn't afford private tutoring, made herself useful instead of ornamental. Rowan and Mira thrived. The other children still sometimes called them names, but less frequently. Rowan's quiet heroism in saving Gareth's son had earned him respect. Mira's fearless charm won over even the most resistant adults. And Kale worked tirelessly to rebuild what the old system had broken. New laws that protected the vulnerable, economic reforms that distributed wealth more fairly, military restructuring that emphasized defense over conquest. It wasn't perfect. Change never was. But it was real, and it was theirs. On a morning in early spring, Elara woke to find Kyle already awake, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "What?" she asked, suddenly self-conscious. "Marry me." She blinked. "What?" "Marry me. Not because of politics or duty or proving anything, just because I love you and I want everyone to know it." He propped himself up on one elbow. "You said to ask again when we'd built something real." "Well, we've built it. A kingdom that's better than it was. A family that's strong and brave and completely imperfect. A life worth living." Alara's heart hammered. "You're serious?" "Completely." "Marry me, Elara. Let me stand beside you officially, publicly, permanently, not as my consort or the mother of my heirs, as my partner, my equal, my choice." She thought about the girl she'd been 6 years ago, desperate for exactly these words. She thought about the woman she'd become in the darkness of rejection and exile. She thought about her children sleeping down the hall and the kingdom still learning to accept them. "Yes," she said, "but not a political wedding, no grand ceremony designed to impress other alphas. Just us, the children, and the people who actually matter." "Done." He kissed her, morning breath in rumpled hair and absolute certainty. "When?" "Summer solstice. Under the open sky. With the whole pack invited to witness. That's 3 months away. Then you have 3 months to prove you won't change your mind." He didn't, Chet. The wedding took place on the longest day of the year, in a meadow outside the village where wildflowers grew in chaotic profusion. No grand pavilions or formal seating, just open space, warm sun, and nearly the entire pack in attendance. Some came out of curiosity, some out of genuine support, some probably hoping for disaster. Elara wore a simple dress the color of spring leaves, flowers woven through her hair by Mira's insistent hands. No crown, no jewels, no symbols of power, just herself. Kael wore casual clothes that would have scandalized the old council. Leather pants, simple shirt, no formal regalia. Just himself. Rowan and Mira stood between them, part of the ceremony instead of observers. Because this wasn't just about two people joining. It was about a family choosing each other. Elder Gareth, one of the council members who'd resigned rather than vote against Kael, performed the ceremony. His voice was strong despite his age. "We gather to witness a choice," he began. "Not a bond forced by fate, but a commitment made freely. These two people have walked separate paths through darkness. They've survived rejection, exile, war, and transformation. And now they choose to walk forward together, not because they must, because they want to." He turned to Kael. "Do you choose this woman? With all her flaws and strength, her scars and courage, her past and her future?" "I do. I choose her today and every day forward. Not because fate decreed it, but because she's the strongest person I know, and I'm better with her than without her." Gareth turned to Elara. "Do you choose this man? With all his flaws and power, his mistakes and growth, his past and his future?" Elara looked at Kael. Really looked. Saw the boy who'd whispered promises in the dark. Saw the king who'd chosen truth over convenience. Saw the father who read bedtime stories and fielded impossible questions with patience. Saw the man who'd risked everything rather than lose her again. "I do. I choose him today and every day forward. Not because fate decided for me, but because he's proven that people can change, that mistakes can be learned from, and that choosing each other matters more than being chosen for each other." They exchanged simple silver bands. No elaborate jewelry, just symbols of commitment. "Then by the power of witness and choice," Gareth said, "I recognize this union. May it be built on truth, sustained by effort, and strengthened by love freely given." The crowd erupted. Some cheering, some clapping, some probably grumbling but doing it quietly enough to avoid notice. Kael kissed her as the sun reached its peak, light spilling over them like benediction. Rowan tugged on his father's shirt. Are you officially our family now? We were always your family, Kael said, kneeling down. This just makes it official for everyone else. Good, Mira declared, because I told the other children you were my father and some of them didn't believe me. They'll believe you now. The celebration lasted until sunset. Food and music and dancing, children running through the meadow playing games, adults talking and laughing with the kind of ease that came from shared joy instead of shared obligation. Elara stood at the edge of it all, watching her children play with the same children who'd once called them names. Watching Kael move through the crowd, comfortable and confident and real in ways the old king never had been. Seraphine approached, carrying 2 cups of wine. Congratulations, she said, offering one to Elara. You've accomplished something remarkable. What's that? You made an entire kingdom rethink everything it believed about power, legitimacy, and choice. Seraphine sipped her wine. When I first came here, I thought you were a complication. A woman in the wrong place at the wrong time, causing problems. Now I think you might be exactly what this kingdom needed. I didn't set out to change anything. I just wanted to protect my children. And in protecting them, you forced everyone to question systems that had stood for centuries, whether they deserved protection, whether tradition was more important than truth. Seraphine smiled. That's power, Elara. Not the kind that comes from crowns or armies, the kind that comes from refusing to accept less than what you deserve. I still don't feel powerful. I feel like I'm making it up as I go. Everyone is. The difference is you're honest about it. Seraphine raised her glass. To honesty and to choices that matter. They drank as the sun set over the meadow, painting everything gold and red. That night, after the celebration ended and the guests went home, Elara stood with Kael on the stronghold balcony looking out over the kingdom. Do you regret it? She asked quietly. Everything you gave up? Everything that changed? Not for a second. He pulled her close, his chin resting on her head. I regret 6 years ago. Regret the pain I caused, the time we lost. But this, everything we've built, I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Even knowing how hard it would be, especially knowing that the hard things are what matter, the easy path is just comfortable failure. Elara thought about that, about the cottage on the ridge and the years of hiding, about the moment she'd decided to stop running and face what came. About standing in front of a mob and refusing to apologize for existing. I used to think survival was enough, she said. Just getting through each day, keeping the children safe, staying invisible. But that's not living, it's just enduring. And now? Now I think living means fighting for what matters even when it's hard. Choosing truth even when lies are easier. Building something real instead of hiding from something broken. She turned in his arms. We're building something real here. Not perfect, but real. And that's enough. Kael kissed her forehead. More than enough. They stood there as stars emerged, countless and brilliant against dark sky. Below them, the kingdom slept. Imperfect, still learning, still changing, but theirs. Down the hall, Rowan and Mira slept in their beds, safe and acknowledged and free to grow into whoever they chose to be. And Elara, who'd once believed she was worth nothing, stood beside a king who'd learned that everything worth having required choosing it every single day. Not because of fate or bonds or destiny written in stars, but because of courage, truth, and the simple radical choice to keep choosing each other when walking away would have been easier. That was the real power. Not in crowns or titles or political alliances. In the daily decision to stay, to fight, to build instead of destroy. In choosing love over fear, truth over comfort, reality over fantasy. And this time, finally, completely, irrevocably, nothing would take that from them. Because they'd earned it. Not through destiny or fate or the convenience of others. Through blood and tears and the kind of stubborn refusal to give up that transformed broken people into something stronger than they'd ever been alone. They'd built something real. And that was worth everything they'd sacrificed to get here. The kingdom would continue to change. New challenges would come. There would be setbacks and struggles and moments of doubt, but they would face them together. Not as fated mates bound by forces beyond their control, but as partners who chose each other with full knowledge of the cost and the commitment required to make it work. And in that choice, renewed every morning, tested every day, strengthened by every challenge overcome, they found something more powerful than destiny. They found freedom. The freedom to be imperfect and still worthy. The freedom to make mistakes and learn from them. The freedom to choose their own path instead of following one laid out by tradition and fear. That was what they gave their children. Not a perfect kingdom, not an easy life, but the knowledge that they were wanted, chosen, valued, not for what they could provide, but for who they were. And that made all the difference. As the night deepened and the stronghold settled into silence, Alara and Kyle finally went inside. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles to fight, new minds to change, new systems to build. But tonight, they simply existed together in the quiet certainty that they were exactly where they chose to be. And that choice, renewed daily through effort and commitment and stubborn hope, was the foundation of everything that mattered. Not fate, choice. And in choosing each other, imperfect, scarred, but real, they created something stronger than any bond forced by destiny. They created a life worth living, together.